in this process. So therefore, I have taken recommendations both from both sides on how long would you like to talk. And it was agreed by them that they want to go an hour and a half each side. So that's what we have agreed to, an hour and a half on each side. I would ask if you can, not to try to repeat what other people has mentioned, but try to make your case and your point as brief as you can so everyone, right, will have the availability to talk. And let me just say that what this also, I think, represents is not only a fair hearing that we have in the Senate, but more importantly that whatever the outcome is of today, we will take a vote. It's greater than that of any one senator, and it's greater than that of any one chairman, that it's a result of the democratic process, which is 10 members in this committee that will sit here and vote today, that will share the opinion on what happens to this bill in 2018. So that's how our system works. It's a great system that don't always please everybody, but it does work. I would just simply welcome each and every one of you that are here today, and thank you for traveling from distances all over the state of Indiana to be here. I want you to know that this is your house, and I sincerely mean that, and we welcome you with open arms and welcome you to witness the process of how bills are passed here in Indiana, but we thank you again for being here. Having said that, we will move along and now hear testimony on Senate Bill 26, and the author of that bill, a longtime friend and a colleague of mine, Senator Boots. Senator Boots, welcome, and please explain to us Senate Bill 26.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. Appreciate very much the opportunity to present 26. Appreciate your hearing the bill. This is an issue that has been submitted several times over the past several years. It is an issue that was obviously taken up by the Alcohol Revision Commission that was formed this last summer. Senate Bill 26 simply removes language that refers to temperature. Currently, only liquor stores can sell cold or beer cold. All other retailers, beer retailers, have to sell it warm, room temperature. And all this bill does is remove that reference to temperature, where if you have a beer license, then you can sell it at any temperature you choose, warm, cold, in between, whatever. It also does remove some language that we put in the bill or the code last year referring to cold beer, the intent of the legislature, et cetera. So it removes that language as well. But that's simply all this bill does. My purpose in this, presenting this bill, has been that the consumer in the state of Indiana, we are the only state that I'm aware of that regulates the temperature of the beer as it's sold by a retailer. I know that some states, maybe localities, can regulate the temperature, but as far as a state, we are the only state that regulates that. And I'm trying to provide clarity to consumers, because consumers don't understand that when they go to someplace and they purchase a legal product, that they can't buy it cold, or there is a restriction. The interesting thing is that we don't restrict the temperature of wine. So convenience stores, grocery stores can sell wine cold or warm, whichever they prefer. They just can't sell malt beverages cold. So that seems to be a little confusing to the public, and it's my intent to just make it so that the public understands when they go to buy a legal product, they can buy it in any way they choose to buy it. I'll address the exclusivity of liquor stores to having cold beer. I just want to point out that not every community has a liquor store. So if you're in a rural area and you have a convenience store or you have a grocery store that you can purchase beer, you may have to travel 10, 12, 20 miles, I don't know, to find a liquor store to be able to purchase that cold beer. You know, when you have an issue, you have a party, you have a backyard party or whatever it is, and you run out of product, a legal product, and you want to go purchase, resupply, you have to find a liquor store to find that cold beer. And obviously, we're going to fix the issue of whether that's Sunday or other 6 days of the week. So the issue here today is, and what the Code Revision Committee heard a lot about, is not what's good for the public, what is necessarily what the public wants. A survey done by Ball State said that 61% of the consumers want to be able to buy their beer cold or warm, whatever. Whoever is able to sell it to them, they want to buy it any way they wish. So 61% of the public wants that. What the Code Revision Committee heard a lot about is who's going to gain and who's going to lose in this whole thing. And you know, my point is that I don't think it's the legislature should be deciding what businesses survive, what businesses don't. Competition is a great thing, and if people choose to compete, they will survive. If they choose not to compete and they rely on the legislature to have certain laws that said you have an exclusivity and it's just one product, you know, I would love for us to have a bill that says I'm the only guy that can sell gasoline in Montgomery County. It's not going to happen. We have competition, and that's what makes us all better, and that's what makes us good. You're going to hear probably from some of the liquor store owners that this will put them out of business. I know that liquor stores thrive in every other state in the nation, and I don't know that cold beer is the reason that they are existing today. Many of them will tell you this is the reason they're alive. But just as a side note, I'll point out that government changes rules and regulations on a regular basis. We look at, I want to point back to a year or two ago where we talked about vaping, and we pretty much destroyed that industry in the state of Indiana by instituting new laws, and many vaping issues left the state. Point out something that happens to me, or has happened to me a couple times, is you have a nice, in full disclosure, I do operate convenience stores. I don't sell alcohol. I don't choose to sell alcohol. But I do have convenience stores that sell gas. And if the state of Indiana, the NDOT, decides that they're going to redo an intersection where one of my locations is located, and it's a very busy location, and they decide to put a median down all 4 ways on that highway, and they limit your access to that location, it pretty much destroys that business. And I've had to do that twice, where I've had to rebuild a station somewhere else so that my people could have access to me. The state of Indiana does not have to reimburse you for that. They don't have to reimburse for the loss of business. They only reimburse you for any land that they may take in their project. So I just want to point out that when liquor stores tell you that this may put them out of business, my point is if they choose not to compete, then that could possibly happen. But if they compete, they will survive just like the rest of us do. And I can tell you that the convenience store industry is one of the most competitive industries in the state. So with that, I'll just point out that you know, we should be doing public policy. This is my opinion. Public policy should be what's best for the public. 99% of the people that consume alcohol do it responsibly. They don't abuse the drinking and driving. Obviously, there are some that do. And I don't know any laws. We already have laws against it, so I don't know how we can pass any laws that are going to address that issue, because it happens, and it's going to continue to happen. So my point is that let's talk about what's good for the public, what the public wants. And I'm telling you that the public, according to our surveys, have said that they wish to have be able to purchase their beer cold at any venue that does sell it. There were other issues that were brought up in the Code Revision Committee this year, or Commission, regarding server training. Convenience stores currently obviously don't have to have server training and don't have to be licensed. They don't have to be 21. There was the convenience store industry and the grocery store industry had that provisions, or they presented those provisions and said they would be willing to accept that. where they would have to be licensed, have their server training, and they would have to be 21-year-old clerks to sell alcohol. I can tell you that I submitted a Sunday sales bill for the last several years, and in my Sunday sales bill, the reason that those provisions are not in this current bill is because I put them in my Sunday sales bill. And that says that it eliminates the commodity restrictions on liquor stores. Currently, they have a commodity restriction. Would eliminate all those Coke machines out in front of their venues. They could sell them inside. It would create the server training and requirement that they be licensed, the clerks be licensed, that they be 21. And so there were other things that were in there. The other thing that came before the Code Revision Committee this year was if there is a possibility that liquor stores are going to lose value in their businesses, that convenience stores would agree, and grocery stores, I believe, would agree to an increase in their license fees that then could create a fund that could mitigate some of the loss of value in those other venues. If that's what the legislature chose to do, I personally think that's a bad precedent to set, but that's part of the agreement that everybody made in order to make this even across the level of cold beer in all venues. So with that, I'll be happy to answer any questions. And once again, I appreciate the committee, the chairman hearing this and the committee considering this.
Thank you, Senator Booth. Question by committee members? Senator Booth, one thing that you said in your opening that I could not agree with you more, and that is it's about public policy. And I've said all along that that's what we are here to do in every committee and every bill. Is it good public policy, both short-term and long-term, for the citizens of Indiana? You was present, just like your thoughts on this, when there was a forum about 5-6 weeks ago in the convention center that you was present at, that Senator Gard and I sat on the forum. And Senator Gard, for public knowledge, was the chairman and is the chairman, excuse me, of the Summer Study Committee, former senator in the Indiana Senate, and also who voted in favor in the committee vote of the expansion of cold beer. But when she was asked, my point is one of the bigger advocates of expansion of cold beer, when she was asked in that committee, is this the session for cold beer? Would you vote for it now? Her comment was no, because of the fact of the shortage that we have in the ACT on the enforcement end. Her comment was that, in her opinion, that it would be short-sighted of the General Assembly and not good public policy to have the expansion, which is debatable in how many facilities. Some say 5,000, some say 8,000, without the enforcement body being there, recognizing that we have a shortage here regardless of this issue, of 64 excise police officers in 92 counties, permits of 14,988 facility permits, 202,175 bartender and employee permits, and 8,370 tobacco retailer certificates that they are responsible for, 64. And that's not all. 10% of the 64 is in the administration and not actually boots in the ground. So I'm long-winded in saying and asking you, based on what you said in public policy, do you think that we're putting, and I've had this discussion with many of my colleagues on both sides, do you think we're putting the cart ahead of the horse if we would vote in favor of cold beer today without having those resources to increase the ACT and the process of hiring them and training them that would be in place, sir?
Well, to go along with that, I'll expand on when I had my Sunday sales bill. It increased the license fees and required Sunday sales to be licensed separately, raised about $2.5 million, which went to enforcement. And I think that's what we need to do. That's why I think that most retailers or most licensees would be willing to increase their fees and dedicate that to enforcement. As you recall, during the summer study, the commission talked about funding problem-solving courts using some of the excise money. I know that there's an effort in some people over in the House that if we can get this bill to the House, that they would like to increase the excise tax as well. So I agree with you 100% that we need more money going into excise enforcement because that's very underfunded and they're way behind in their agencies, et cetera. And maybe this is not a big deal, but I think part of my expansion, or if you want to call it expansion of cold beer, we have excise officers now that are going around checking whether it's cold or it's warm. I mean, oftentimes they're actually going in and opening a beer and putting a thermometer in it to find out if it's too cold or it's too whatever. So I think that's just another area of the enforcement that we could take off their shoulders. If we just say, if you have beer license, you sell cold beer or you sell it warm. So I agree with you that we need to address the funding issue as well. So my point, I guess, is that my Sunday sales bill addressed some of that issue to go to enforcement, but that's not in this bill. So if we move this to the floor, then I would hope that we could put that type of amendment on it and expand that so we can get more money to at least to excise and possibly to the problem-solving courts as well, use this money. I can tell you that when I first introduced cold beer, I got lobbied heavily by a group in Montgomery County called the Head Coalition, which is against drugs and alcohol. And when I told them that the amount of money that I was going to dedicate to enforcement, they actually supported the bill because they said, we just need more money to keep to enforce the alcohol bills that we have, or the laws that we have. So I agree with you 100%.
Okay.
Yes.
Thank you, Senator Bruce. Further question by committee members? Thank you. We will move on now to public testimony. Joe Lackey.
I'm not Joe Lackey.
Welcome, Joe. Good to see you.
Thank you, Senator.
Thanks for being here today.
First of all, my name is Joe Lackey. I'm president of the Indiana Grocery and Convenience Store Association. I'll be very brief. I've been doing this since 1973. And I mentioned Alive and Good and some of the other folks. We started this. We were a lot thinner. We had brown hair. But it really hasn't changed a lot as far as what we're trying to achieve. I want to thank Senator Boots for introducing this bill. Thank Senator Alting for hearing it and give us an opportunity to talk about it. When we began this, I'm just going to make two quick points. We began this in 1973. I had several hundred grocers throughout the state of Indiana, and most of you think about your local communities. How many grocers have closed since 1973? And I don't think any of you in any community in the state of Indiana hasn't had groceries close and go out of business in their communities. To the point where now we have senators and representatives introducing bills trying to fix the problem of what's called food deserts, because there's places where people simply can't buy food because there's not enough stores around. All of this was brought about mainly because of the big boxes that came in and wiped out a lot of the stores. There were a lot of mergers, acquisitions, a lot of things going on. More and more changes are going to take place. Now Amazon is getting in the food business. Nobody really knows what that impact is going to be. But it is going to be an impact probably down the line as far as alcoholic beverage sales. So the point is, all of this is continuing to change. The legislature and you members of the committee are being asked to basically protect the liquor stores. As Senator Boots pointed out, several of the liquor stores have said, if you pass cold beer, we're going to go out of business. I have to ask you, which is more important? Groceries going out of business where people don't have food, or liquor stores going out of business? It's what's called the free enterprise system, and that's what really ought to drive this. Our position is we really don't think the legislature should be involved in this question. Never should have been involved in this question. But if you're going to do protection, where's your protection priority? Where should it be? Should it be with providing food for your constituents, or should it be with providing cold beer for your constituents through a limited number of outlets? The whole thing is really kind of ridiculous. I'm not going to belabor you with the point that Indiana is the only state in the United States where grocers can sell beer and can't sell it cold. Only state in the United States where cold beer is more expensive than warm beer. Does that make sense to anybody? It doesn't. One other issue. Several of you have told me that recently, with the advent of the cold beer legislation, that you've been approached by churches and religious groups saying that they don't think there should be any expansion on the sale of alcoholic beverage, and there should not be any cold beer sales. If you really believe that, if you really think that's true, then I would suggest to you that what you ought to do is ban the sale of cold beer across the board in the state of Indiana. If you really believe cold beer is a problem, then ban it across the board, and then it won't be an issue any longer. Thank you for the opportunity to present this information, and I'll be happy to answer any questions you might have.
Members, questions by any committee members? Thank you, Joe. We appreciate you being here. Mr. J. Ricker? Is that your family out there? Or?
There are quite a few up there, but they're not all mine.
Okay, no.
Thank you very much.
Welcome, Mr. Ricker. We appreciate you being here.
Yeah, thank you. In fact, the first duty I had here was to thank you, Senator Alting, and Public Policy. I don't think there's ever been a hearing on this before. Didn't think so. So we're making some progress. I think it's an important topic. And the other group that I would like to thank in particular, and we have a couple members that were on the Alcohol Commission that was very, very ably chaired by Senator Beauregard. I thought it was a very fair hearing. For those of you who didn't sit through all this in the summer months, there were a lot of things that came out of it, and I will touch on a few things. I don't want to go over what Senator Boots and others have said already, but I may touch on a few things. The commission didn't reach the mandatory number to get a recommendation. I believe that your chairman mentioned that. However, we did receive a majority, 8-7, on cold beer, no amendments, nothing on it. And that was because we didn't have enough people there to vote. We had 2 people that had missed many of the meetings. And you mentioned that Senator Gard had voted yes. But I think what's really important is that when she started out this, and she said all this publicly, I'm not saying anything that she said privately, she really wasn't in favor of cold beer. But by the time she listened to all the testimony, she said that she was in favor of it. It was touched on that there's been a poll taken. There were 2 polls taken. I will touch just on the Ball State poll, which had support 61 to 31%. That was a statewide poll of people in favor of cold beer. You know, we talk about the liquor stores, we talk about convenience stores, we talk about grocery stores and how it will benefit them. However, I think the one person that we're missing here a lot of times are the consumers in the state of Indiana, and they would like to have that. It was mentioned that no other state regulates the temperature of cold beer, and that in this state, and nobody in this particular room or in the legislature, I should say, was involved in making it a legal monopoly, but it is a monopoly. You know, one of the things that I've been asked, and I think I've met with everybody on this commission, you're probably sick of seeing my face, I've had a lot of things, and I want to try to address some of those things that were brought up to us. There is no increase in licenses to speak of. There aren't any licenses out there extra. The reason this all came to everyone's attention was that I had a restaurant license at 2 of our stores, one in Columbus and one in Sheridan, Indiana. The reason I got a restaurant license, which we went through all the process, and I won't even address all that part, was There were no other licenses available for grocery stores. I couldn't get a license, and that's true in many cases here in the state. I don't have a license at all my stores because they aren't available a lot of places, so I think you need to keep that in mind. Somebody touched a minute ago on a really key point that I have talked about in testimony many times. Businesses have to evolve. I have to evolve. I'm selling fuel. Well, what's that fuel going to be in a few years? Is it going to be electric? Is it going to be hydrogen? Who knows what it's going to be? Is it going to be a solar panel on top of the doggone vehicle? I don't think any of us know, but sales are slowly declining in liquid fuels. Tobacco is a declining category. I have 900 people that work for me. I have a bank I owe a mortgage to. I intend to make a living for my family. Mine is a family-run business. It's all here in Indiana. And so I got to stay in business of bricks and mortar. Amazon is delivering everything. We probably got a whole room full of people here that have Prime memberships, my wife included. They're getting into the grocery business. I have to be able to compete with them. And to compete with them, I need to be able to sell what my customers want, and my customers want cold beer. One of the things that I do today that I didn't think I'd be in a few years ago is I'm running restaurants inside my stores. That's what people want. I need a profit category that will keep me in business. If you would have asked me if I was going to run an ATM when I first got in business, I would have said, well, the banks do that. I'm not going to do that. Well, yeah, I'm in the ATM business too. So things do change as time goes on. I would have liked to have seen us have the amendments today to debate, but I do think that it needs to be amended. I think we need to level the playing field between the liquor and the C-stores and the ability to sell cold beer. And to that end, we expect to pay more for a license. It was alluded to that we had talked about paying more for the privilege of selling cold beer. And for this fee to be designed by the legislature, I'm not in the business of doing that. And that can take care of some of the criticism that I've heard from many people that we got all these mom and pop locations and they're going to be put out of business. I really don't think everyone's going to be put out of business. However, we're all in agreement in our industry to have a fund set up. How the legislature decides it's to be spent, whether it's to have more ATC officers, whether it's to have a level playing field, if their permits are devalued, that's for you to decide, not me. I mentioned that we had a lot of testimony this summer. I'm not going to go into great detail, but one of the things that came up a number of times was the failure rate to sell to underage. The liquor stores were at about 8.5%, and convenience stores, grocery stores were about 5.2%. So I don't think it's a criticism of us that we're worse at changing it. But in the spirit of leveling that playing field, we think everyone should have 21-year-old clerks. That's not mandated for us today. We think all clerks should be licensed and trained. We think the commodity restrictions should be dropped. And for those who are wondering what the heck is commodity restrictions, the liquor stores have a lot of things that they're not allowed by law presently to sell. I think that's a silly rule. Again, nobody in this room set that up. I think they ought to be able to sell whatever they want to sell. We also think that that this should be delayed when we get cold beer to July of 19. Why did I pick July of 19? That's because we heard testimony a number of times from people that said if they paid a high fee, and I'll address that in a moment, that it takes them about 3 years to recover that money. That was testimony from liquor stores. There's some key points that I'd like to touch on as I sum up here before I get any questions. Again, there's no big change in the number of licenses. We sell warm beer. We just don't sell cold beer. I mentioned the 3 years to recoup. This is from the ATC. There's only 4 permits since 2014 that have sold for over the $1,000. Only 4 permits. Many times you hear that the permits went for $400, they went for $500. There are a handful of those. The vast majority of the permits in the state of Indiana go for what the state sells them for. If somebody pays that much, and I'm in business, and if I pay a whole lot of money for a piece of land that I didn't have to down the street in a small town, it's because I expect to make money off of it. I can't believe that people are paying those high amounts basically here in the urban areas in Fort Wayne and down in Evansville, it's not because they expected to lose money, it's because they expected to make money. You know, again, I've mentioned the consumers want this to be changed. How many of you, when you got your driver's license years ago, thought that you would be gassing up at a station that had satellite TV being beamed down while you filled your car? Things change. You know, I've been championing this discussion for some time. I've tried to be reasonable. I think if something's going to change, it needs to be fair to both sides. I've outlined a lot of those. My ask for all of you on this Public Policy Committee today is to vote this out of committee so that the full Senate can weigh in. I know many of you have friends that own liquor stores, you have churches that have lobbied you very hard, and when you think about the citizens of Indiana, they want to change. Thank you very much.
Question by committee members. I just want to say, Mr. Rickers, I've appreciated our dialogue that you and I have had in several meetings, and appreciate kind of being educated from your standpoint on your views throughout the state on the dialogue and continued dialogue of the expansion of cold beer. And for no other reason than thank you for at least heading that charge. I commend you for that. It's not easy to go out of the box all the time.
Yeah, well, thank you very much. You know, I think you got to be reasonable. You know, I will be very honest with everyone here. I've been pretty aggravated at times, but I don't think that's the way to get your way. I think you need to be reasonable when you talk to people. Everyone's not going to agree with me, and I'm not going to agree with them. So thank you.
Thank you. I appreciate it. Thank you. Next person is for the Marathon Petroleum, Richard. Welcome, Richard. I appreciate our meeting yesterday, too, by the way.
Chairman Alting, thank you very much for allowing us to speak today. Members of the committee, you as well. My name is Richard Kadinsky. I work for Marathon Petroleum Company. I manage its state governmental affairs for the state of Indiana. Marathon Petroleum is a widespread company. We operate over the course of a very wide landscape, and we do a lot of things within the business community. We touch the manufacturing sector with refining. We touch the midstream infrastructure sector, supply and distribution of fuels, with pipelines underground, trucks on the road, even barges up and down the waterways. Additionally, we are in the retail sector as well, with our Marathon branded stations up and down the street, and our company-owned and operated arm, which is the Speedway convenience stores, both of which are represented in a very large way in the state of Indiana. We rise in support of Senate Bill 26, and we're engaged in the Summer Study Committee. We testified actually twice in favor of cold beer and convenience stores and the expansion during the first hearing and also during the second one. With me today, I have Speedway's Manager of Merchandising, Tony Karff, who oversees all of the beer and alcohol business within the Speedway stores, not only in Indiana, but for the entirety of the company. And we'd like to offer our comments on Senate Bill 26.
Before we do that, is there any questions before we move to the next speaker? Okay, sir, welcome.
Thank you. Good afternoon, Chairman Alting and members of the committee. My name is Tony Karff, and I appreciate the time this afternoon to speak to you. As Director of Merchandising for Speedway LLC, I'm appearing before you today to express Speedway's recommendation that the committee recommend a full Senate vote on Senate Bill 26, which will allow convenience stores to sell cold beer. Speedway currently operates 309 convenience stores across the state of Indiana that offer fuel as well as beverages, candy, sundry items, tobacco products, and many other convenience items. 186 of those stores currently sell beer. In 2017, we employed more than 3,300 store associates and had a payroll of just under $80 million in the state of Indiana. As Director of Merchandising at Speedway, I oversee numerous categories of products we sell, including beer. While Speedway currently sells warm beer in 186 stores in Indiana, we are also selling cold beer in over 2,000 stores in 16 states in the Midwest and the East Coast. The surrounding states of Illinois, Michigan, Kentucky, and Ohio allow convenience stores to sell cold beer. In those states alone, Speedway has over 900 stores selling beer cold. Due to the current restriction that only permits convenience stores to sell warm beer in Indiana, our annual revenue for beer is very low in the Hoosier State when compared to revenue for beer in other states, particularly in the 4 surrounding states. Our average store in Indiana has beer sales that are 10% of the volume of beer we sell in the surrounding states. Speedway is supportive of allowing convenience stores in the state of Indiana to sell cold beer to consumers. The current law that prohibits the sale of cold beer to our customers is outdated and does not reflect fair competition within the state of Indiana. Speedway strongly supports free and open markets. The current law restricting the sale of cold beer in convenience stores goes against this principle. Many consumers today live very busy lives, and giving them the opportunity to purchase cold beer in addition to their other convenience store items is of great benefit to them. Supporting fair competition and allowing consumers to choose where they shop and what they purchase is critical to providing economic growth within the state. Speedway has invested significantly in capital projects, rebuilding older stores and adding new stores from the ground up. With stores in 21 states, we have a lot of options as to where we spend our capital dollars. It is important for us to be able to supply the products that convenience store customers are in search of when looking for additional investment opportunities for our capital dollars. When we build a new store, we add between 30 to 40 permanent jobs, as well as the construction jobs that are needed to build the store. We also provide medical and dental benefits, and all employees we hire have the potential to earn bonus and can take part in our 401k program with a company match. We are proud to provide long-term career opportunities to all our employees. Speedway also is a strong supporter of the communities in which we operate. In 2016, through the generosity of our customers, store associates, and vendor partners, we donated $1.9 million to Riley Hospital for Children. We want to continue to invest in the people and communities of Indiana. As part of our commitment to be a good corporate citizen, Speedway has a very strong initial and ongoing training program that educates all of our store associates regarding the sale of alcohol in our stores. All associates are required to complete responsible alcohol sales training when they are hired, and then again several times each year throughout their entire employment. We also go above and beyond this training and hire an independent third party to perform anonymous mystery shops, a minimum of 6 times per year per store. We have a very strict policy whereby any associate who violates any law regarding the sale of alcohol is terminated, period. Speedway is a responsible retailer. Last year, the state of Michigan expanded the availability of beer licenses, and Speedway added 200 stores to selling cold beer in the state of Michigan. We have seen a slow and steady growth of beer sales in these stores and would expect similar results in Indiana. It will take time for consumers to recognize new destinations to purchase cold beer, which would not result in drastic sales declines for any retailer currently selling cold beer. As a business-friendly state, Indiana has new retailers opening daily. I'm sure everyone would agree that competition is good and promotes new jobs as well as increased revenue for the state. Cold beer sales are a very important aspect of Speedway's business in the states where we operate, and our revenues are derived not only through beer sales, but also through the other products our customers purchase while in the stores buying cold beer. As stated earlier, Speedway feels that allowing convenience stores to sell cold beer in the state of Indiana should be voted on by the full Senate. Our customers want cold beer. Thank you for your time and attention to this important issue. I do appreciate it.
Thank you for being here, and most important, thank you to Speedway for what you do, not only for Riley Hospital, but for our communities throughout Indiana. We appreciate that very much. I think I asked you a question this summer in the committee, but let me ask you it again. I apologize for repeating myself, but so you're in 20 states total, correct?
Yes, sir. Correct.
And outside of Indiana, how many locations do you have?
That sell beer?
Yeah.
2,000. Well,
how many locations?
About 1,800 that sell beer.
Okay. How many do you have total?
Total stores?
Yeah.
2,500.
So why don't you, and out of the 1,800, how many cold beer?
Well,
How many can serve cold beer?
We have 2,500 total convenience stores. 1,800 of those, a little over 1,800 sell cold beer, plus the warm beer sales in Indiana of about 186 stores.
Okay. So outside of Indiana, do you have stores that you do not sell cold beer in?
There are some states that restrict beer sales entirely. There is no state in the country that allows you to sell beer warm but not cold. Indiana is the only state that has the temperature restriction.
But are you saying that you do have other states, you have locations that you can sell no beer whatsoever in?
That's correct.
No beer whatsoever?
Correct.
Okay. Further question by committee? Yes, Senator Lannon.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Question, because you did catch my attention there about the other states in which you sell cold beer, and how many states does that exist?
16.
16, I thought that's what you said. In those other 16 states, are liquor stores, are they allowed to sell cold beer too? Or do you know the answer?
I don't know the actual answer to that. I would say that they probably are, but I don't know the details of every state and the liquor stores in those states.
To the best of your knowledge, has the fact that you've been selling cold beer in your convenience stores, has it driven liquor stores out of business?
I have never heard of that happening where we sell cold beer, not to my knowledge.
Okay. All right, thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Senator. Yeah, Senator Randolph.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. A couple questions I've got, and maybe you can kind of clear it up for me. What products do your 2,500 stores sell?
What products do they sell?
Yeah.
We would sell food service products. We would sell beverages such as bottled water, bottled soft drinks, Gatorade, milk, eggs, bread, candy, anything that you would see in a convenience store where you fuel your car at. We sell products similar to J. Ricker's convenience stores. We sell, as I mentioned, beer in the vast majority of our convenience stores. We sell it cold. We sell tobacco products. We sell cigarette products. We sell age-restricted products already in our stores today. We sell lottery. We have ATM machines. We have a tremendous amount of services that we offer to our consumers.
What's the main product that you have?
Our main product is fuel. Our main product is gasoline. That's where we started. Marathon Petroleum Company is our parent company. That is our main product. And then after that, it's our cooler. We have cold coolers where we sell water, Gatorade, milk, energy drinks, really the products that consumers in the states we operate in have a demand for. If there's a demand for the product, we will sell it in our stores.
When you first started operating as a business entity, you started as a service station selling gasoline?
Going way back, yes. I've got 30 years in with the company, so by then we evolved when I started with the company. So a lot of the products I just mentioned to you, we sold back then. One of the things that's changed is our stores are bigger. So they're bigger stores. And like Mr. Ricker mentioned, we are also in the food service business. Many stores that we open today have a full-service food service operation when you can order specialty pizzas, specialty sandwiches, specialty coffee drinks from a touch screen. So we are really in the restaurant business as well as we've evolved over time.
But over a period of, you started off as a service station, main product selling gasoline. Over a period of time, in this case years, you evolve around other products.
Correct.
When revolving around these other products, how do you purchase? Do you purchase them singly? Do you purchase in bulk?
We would purchase, there's several different ways where we purchase our products. In many cases, they're through a direct store delivery service. For example, Coca-Cola, Pepsi-Cola, they have trucks, and we would purchase it in bulk, as you would refer to. We also have a large wholesaler, E.B. Brown Company, which actually has a large warehouse facility in Plainfield, Indiana. A lot of our grocery type items, cereal, candy, energy bars, health bars, those types of things we purchase directly through a wholesaler like E.B. Brown.
What's the purpose in purchasing in bulk, though? What's the purpose? Why purchase in bulk?
It's more convenient and easy for our stores to get a delivery of, let's say, 25 cases of Coca-Cola 1 or 2 times a week. Our dairy companies will deliver milk sometimes 1 to 2 times a week. It's just more efficient to purchase product in larger quantities, and it just makes sense to do it that way.
Okay. And when you do it that way, do you, dealing with your manufacturer or either wholesalers, whoever you buy your product from in bulk, they normally give you a discount?
In some cases they do. In some cases the prices we pay for product is the same as anyone would pay for product, whether they have a smaller store or a larger store. It varies greatly on the product that we purchase.
But in any event, when you buy in bulk, you want to minimize your cost, operation cost, correct?
In many cases, sure.
And you want to maximize your profit.
Sure.
And you have the ability, because of your size and your resources, to buy in bulk.
In some cases we do, yes.
Well, you got 2,500 stores.
Sure.
So I would think if you got 2,500 stores, you got funds to handle that, you've got enough to buy in bulk, and your objective is to save money.
It is a benefit, yes.
Okay, right. I guess my obvious question I've got in terms of that, I heard the word compete. I'm from a neighborhood that, in a location store, where an individual worked 9 to 5, saved money, bought a packaged liquor store, sells cold beer. Does that individual like that, could be any other location, other store, has the ability to compete with an operation like yours that has 2,500 stores?
I would think they would be able to compete, yes. I think an example I would use, and where I think you're directing, is Amazon. I think Amazon was mentioned earlier. I mean, the buying power of a company like Amazon, which I think everyone does shop on Amazon, is tremendous. They are competition to us, to other convenience stores, to grocery stores, to the Walmarts, to the Targets. It's just the free enterprise ends up having a lot of different competition. But I think small neighborhood stores in many cases can compete with Speedway and other convenience stores.
Well, the small neighborhood store in my neighborhood, just one, it's a neighborhood store, don't have the resources available to them that you have, and so they would not be able to compete. I guess my question in terms of that is a neighborhood store in terms of cold beer. What's the markup on beer anyway?
It varies by state. Beer is typically a lower margin product than many other products that are sold in stores.
Okay. And so in buying bulk, you can increase your profit on cold beer. Is that correct?
Beer is a regulated product. I would have to look a little bit closer into the state of Indiana, the specific laws on what the cost is. I'm not aware of the specifics, but not in all cases can a very large company specific to beer purchase at a discount. That's not, in some states there is a minimum that everyone has to pay. It's a very level playing field. And I can't speak to the specific in-depth details of liquor laws in the state of Indiana.
But buying bulk, you can minimize your expense, increase your profit, though, correct?
Not necessarily for beer. As I mentioned with the example of Amazon, companies can purchase in bulk. Small neighborhood grocery stores at times, Dollar General type stores, they can purchase in bulk for one individual location on a particular product that they want to sell at an aggressive price.
Can you do that for your other products, buy in bulk, minimize your expense, increase your profit?
For some products.
Because you're in business to make a profit.
Absolutely.
Okay, and it's wise to buy in bulk so you can minimize your expense and make a profit.
Sure, it would be wise for any retailer to minimize their cost as much as they can to provide an attractive retail to sell to their customers.
And that's what you do for all your other products, is that correct?
We do the best we can to provide the best products at the best prices for our consumers.
When you started off, did you start off with one store, or did you start off with the 2,500 stores?
We've grown. Marathon primarily has grown over years through acquisitions. In my 30 years with the company, we've probably acquired over 20 smaller regional convenience store chains. Back in 2014, we purchased 1,300 convenience stores on the East Coast called Hess convenience stores. and we converted them to Speedway.
But your main product is selling gasoline. That was
Our main product is fuel, and then we're very proud of the convenience store items that we are able to offer to our consumers, including food service products.
Okay. And I'm familiar with local packaged liquor stores. Their main product that they sell is beer.
Sure.
Nothing else.
Correct.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Senator. Further questions? Just point of record, every state that you sell beer in, it's a regulated product by that state.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
It is a very, the regulations vary, but it is a heavily regulated product, and we know those policies and procedures and laws very well, and we're very serious about making sure we're a responsible retailer.
Yeah, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Tony? Tony Karf?
That would be.
That's you, okay. Chuck Taylor? Welcome, Chuck. Glad that you're here.
Chairman Alting, very happy to be here. Thanks for having us, giving us this time. I want to thank the senators for all giving us the time to share and to talk about our businesses and the cold beer situation in Indiana. I apologize up front for the dry cough I have. I am not contagious at this point, but I am loud. My name is Chuck Taylor, Jr. I live in Evansville, Indiana. Our headquarters is in Evansville. My daughter, Lane Stuckey, is here today. She and my son are the third generation in our business. We have a couple of other senior members of our staff here with us. We operate 29 convenience stores in southwest Indiana and northwest Kentucky. I think it's 22 in Indiana and 7 in Kentucky. A couple of gasoline onlys in addition to that. My father started the business, bought a small shell distributorship in 1967. I came back from school in 77 and joined him. We serviced 6 small gasoline stations at that time. All they sold was gasoline. Repair services, as all of us would be recognized. Over the years, we have grown. We have added stores, bought stores, remodeled facilities, built new facilities across Indiana. We now have about 350 people working for us in our company and have invested millions in land and equipment here in Indiana. We operate under the Chuckles convenience stores brand. We compete against, it seems like everybody. They've mentioned Amazon here, but we compete against the big boxes, the CVS, Walgreens, other convenience stores, Dollar General stores. We operate in small towns, rural towns, as small as, I think, 150 people. And we operate in the 3rd largest Indiana city, Evansville. We have 4 stores in Evansville. We started out just selling gasoline many years ago. Then we added car washes. We added pop. We added cigarettes. Then we became a convenience store, as you know it today. Then we added pizza. We added branded fast food. We have stores that have 2 branded fast food concepts and sit-down eating in them, as Mr. Ricker mentioned earlier. So our business has evolved over the years and has had to stay competitive and to actually stay in business. Why are Indiana beer laws stuck in the 30s? Cold beer sales are about convenience for the customer. Cold sales would allow us to increase sales. We would have to hire more people. part of our request would be that the amendments that have been already highlighted today would be discussed later. Looks like we're going to be trying to pass a clear bill here today. So I ask you to vote positively yes, so that it can be discussed in the full Senate, where the amendments that we've talked about can be looked at. Both fees, implementation delay, I don't think that's been mentioned, till mid to late 2019. We already have clerks are mandatory age 21. We properly train our folks. We currently train everyone in Indiana and Kentucky to the service level. We sell cold beer in Kentucky, have for over 10 years, are quite successful with it, and think it needs to be available here in Indiana. Business is tough. Competition is tough. We've mentioned ACT. We are already inspected. Cigarettes, tobacco, alcohol. They already come and visit us. Lottery. Allowing cold sales does not expand sales like Sunday sales do, just changes the temperature. We already sell beer legally and do a better job than the liquor stores do. Being able to buy when and where the consumer wants, that's what is necessary here. Questions to consider. Why is an item of commerce not available when and where it is demanded by the consumer? Why is the state of Indiana at a competitive disadvantage to neighboring states? Illinois, Kentucky, Ohio, Michigan. What was the original purpose of this bill? No one was here when it first came about. What was the purpose? Why have alcohol taxes not changed in decades? Many communities that we operate in do not have, several don't have liquor stores. Many in the state don't have liquor stores. How far is the consumer expected to drive? Convenience stores are usually within minutes. They service the communities they're in. Finally, why should Indiana be the last to give consumers what they want? Please vote for cold sales and allow the process to continue in the full Senate. Thank you. Thank you all.
Thank you, Mr. Taylor. Comments, questions by committee? Yes, Senator Randolph.
Thank you, Mr. Taylor.
Hi, Senator Randolph.
How you doing?
Good.
We've got a Taylor in our caucus, too, that's right next to you, and he talks a lot longer than you do.
Hey, you gonna let that go? Okay.
But you made an interesting comment. You indicated that you also sell liquor. Is that correct?
Sorry.
Did you indicate you sell liquor?
No.
You don't
Sorry.
sell liquor?
We don't sell
So
liquor.
I'm sorry.
If I said that, I misspoke.
Okay, and in my mistake, then I thought I heard you said that you sell liquor right now.
No.
Okay, and because I thought I heard you say you sell liquor and you do it better than a liquor store can.
Beer, cold beer, wine. Yes.
You sell.
As far as being here in the state of Indiana and in Kentucky, being inspected for underage sales, we do a better job. Okay. We have a zero tolerance policy. If you sell underage, you're gone. Okay. Train everybody to the same standards in Kentucky and Indiana, even though we don't sell cold beer in Indiana yet.
Okay, so you sell warm beer then?
Yes, about everywhere we can.
Okay,
yes.
and so you indicate that you sell that better than a liquor store can?
We're more responsible than, the facts show that we are more responsible than the liquor store industry has been up to this point in selling, not selling to underage people.
Oh, yes. Just in that area is you're referring to then. Just that area is what you're referring to then. Because I was going to ask you, if you said you sell better than a regular liquor store, why is that? How do you go about selling better than a liquor store? That's what my question was going to be. What do you do that liquor stores can't do that caused you to sell better?
Well, I can't say that we're doing anything within the stores, but our stores are convenient, well located, well lighted. well-trafficked. The police are in and out all the time.
Okay. Okay. Thank you, sir. Thank you. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Taylor. We appreciate a family-owned business. I've been in that situation, and I found it very rewarding in this days, but appreciate you and what you do. Dave Kinney. Welcome, Dave, and just for purposes of the committee, Dave is from Lafayette, Indiana, and has several super test stores, and a while back hit the big jackpot, right, on one of the Powerballs. So
sold the big Powerball ticket last, I think, February or March or whatever it was.
Yeah.
So we were blessed to do that, and with the help of the state of Indiana.
yeah, thank you.
Helped us all out.
Thank you,
we're
Dave.
proud to do it.
Appreciate you being here today.
Thank you. Yeah. Chairman Alting and members of the committee, I thank you for serving our state, and I thank you for having this hearing today on Senate Bill 26, and I thank you for this opportunity to speak. Once again, my name is David Kinney, and I'm one of the owners and represent Supertest Oil, headquartered in Lafayette, Indiana, and family-owned and operated since 1958. Supertest Oil has evolved through 3 generations in the petroleum and convenience store industry. Today, Supertest operates 5 independent Supertest convenience stores and 1 card lock fuel system and sells fuel under the Supertest Oil name. Our locations are in the following communities: Lafayette, Indiana, 2 locations, Monticello, Indiana, and Attica, Indiana, and Kokomo, Indiana. Supertest has 4 two-way permits to sell warm beer and cold wine. We want to take a current product we sell responsibly, warm beer, and sell it cold. It's pretty simple. Supertest Oil employs over 50 individuals at these locations and has more than $10 million invested in Indiana. Supertest takes great pride in our company's core value of being a good employer, making ethical decisions, and remaining competitive and profitable, and providing community service through donations and fundraisers for our communities. Supertest also requires a valid ID from everyone to purchase alcohol. Supertest would suggest that all age-restricted products sold in Indiana require a valid ID to be presented from everyone to purchase age-restricted products of any kind: cigarettes, tobacco, lottery, alcohol, etc. One of our unique situations is our Monticello, Indiana store, which is near Indiana Beach Amusement Park. This tourist destination draws a lot of out-of-state people to the area who are confused and frustrated when we tell them they cannot purchase cold beer at a convenience store in Indiana. The majority of people in Indiana, based on a poll, would also like to purchase cold beer in a convenience store in Indiana. The retail landscape has changed in Indiana with the gas and diesel taxes increased and better mileage for vehicles. People are not stopping to purchase fuel. Customer counts and fuel volumes are down, along with inside sales, which affect our profit and affect collection from these establishments for the state. Also, competition from other channels has made running a profitable business much more harder. So we need a better product mix to draw in more customers to be more competitive and profitable. Supertest will request the committee to pass Senate Bill 26 out of the committee to change Indiana's antiquated statutes on alcohol that prevent the retail sales of cold beer in locally owned and operated convenience stores. So the whole Senate and then hopefully the legislature can vote on Senate Bill 26 with the promise of amendments on the Senate floor. It's not good policy for the legislature to pick winners and losers in this debate. What I'd like to see is sound public policy overcome the status quo and give people of Indiana what they want based on polls: cold beer in locally owned and operated convenience stores in Indiana. As stated above, Supertest Oil is customer-oriented, and many of our customers continually ask if we have cold beer for sale. We have to tell them no. It'd be a great benefit to our customers and your constituents if convenience stores could sell cold beer in Indiana. Thank you for this opportunity to speak today.
Thank you, Dave. Comments by committee members? Dave, one thing I want to ask you, having known you for 20 years and you having the the station in Monticello, Indiana. For those of you who are wondering where that's at, Monticello, Indiana is a beach community. You have Lake Schaefer, Lake Freeman up there, Indiana Beach. A lot of people on the lake. When we discuss the hours of operation in the bill, we've tried to go along with the Summer Study Committee with an 8-hour shift because it just makes good business sense. But in your opinion, is 12 to 8, I'm thinking out loud, being a boater myself, is 12 a good time in terms of our beach communities and or resort communities where people are out camping, going to the beach, going into boats, going on the lakes? Is that, in your opinion, is that time okay?
I'm okay with it. I'd rather have everything the same across the board. Whatever it is any other day of the week, it'd be better to have it the same time. And that way it's not as confusing, one, for the customers, and two, for our employees. Even though our systems are programmed to not allow sales at certain times based on the programming, and also check for ID. 12 to 8 is tolerable, but I'd like to see it the same as the rest of the time.
All right. Thank you, Dave. Further comments by committee members? Sure. Senator Taylor.
Yes, thank you. First of all, thank you for being here. Congratulations last night on the basketball game.
Yeah, Purdue. Doing pretty good.
What school was that?
Purdue.
Okay.
University? Is that the basketball game you're talking about?
I don't know what you're talking about. But anyway, the question I have for you is, as I sit here and I think about this thing, you bring up equality and us choosing winners and losers. Mm-hmm. In your store, how would you address the issue of carding? How do you address it now for warm beer sales?
Our issue is we card anybody that wants to buy alcohol, no matter how old they are.
What about the
They're
person?
21 or 95. It's just
what
the way
about
it
the
is.
person behind the counter?
Those people are trained through many different ways. We use NACS, which is National Association of Convenience Store. They have training videos and tapes, and it trains them how to handle people, what to ask for.
Do you ever hire anybody like 16 or 17 years old?
No, we currently do not. We used to in the old days, but right now, pretty much the way it is and the way society has become, we have to hire people, everybody that's usually over 21.
Well, I was just going to say.
Majority of them are, and that's just one, because they're more responsible, and two, they show up to work.
Well, I believe in order to handle alcohol, you have to be above 21.
Yes.
Right? So all your employees are older than 21?
Not all of them, no.
Okay.
But we have no problem with the rule of them all being 21.
I don't think you would, and I think you would abide by it, but I'm just saying that's one thing right there that kind of gets me, is that, I mean, one would assume if you hire a 21-year-old, they might cost you more than an 18-year-old right out of high school that's a college student. I figured in a college town like in your Lafayette stores, you'd have a lot of college students, so they might be 18, 19. And, so I just wonder, how do you handle that currently? Because you have warm beer, you can sell beer.
Right. We currently sell it and everything. So basically, everybody, like I said, is just trying to make sure everybody's over 21.
Okay.
If it doesn't work and it's on a shift, or we limit our alcohol sales, I think we only allow it to be sold to midnight in our locations or something. And that way, if you need a different person there or whatever, we're not as open, as wide as the normal people are. And another reason we do that is because we don't want a lot of drunk people coming to our locations when the bars close or whatever and loading up, and they know that we have quit sales at midnight instead of at 2 or 3 in the morning whenever they're allowed everywhere else.
Yeah, I'm glad you're that responsible, but I'm glad you do it that way.
That's just the way we try to run our corporation.
Right, I appreciate that. All right, thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you, Dave, and thank you for what you do for Tippecanoe County and up in White County. Appreciate it. Kelly McClure. Welcome, Kelly. Thank you for being here today.
Thank you. My name is Kelly McClure. I'm president of McClure Oil Corporation, which is a family-owned business. I represent the 4th generation of this business. We employ about 500 people, and we own and operate 37 convenience stores, all in the state of Indiana. We currently sell warm beer and wine in 26 stores, and we've sold warm beer and wine in our stores for at least 10 plus years. I've personally been involved with our industry's trade association, and I've worked on this particular issue with our leadership and with many of the legislatures for at least 15 plus years. So I appreciate the opportunity to talk to you about this today. My message is going to be kind of direct. Polling shows that the majority of Hoosiers want to be able to purchase beer and wine, and they want to be able to purchase beer and wine where they want, and at what temperature they want, and what day they want. We've sold warm beer for over 10 years in our stores. Allowing us to sell at a different temperature is not an expansion of the category. It's the same product, different temperature. One of the most common questions that our clerks hear in our locations, especially on bordering other states, is, where's your cold beer? One of the New Year's stories that I read online, as you have lots of different news topics, listed each state, and they wanted to know what's the most ridiculous law in each state. And it listed in Alabama, in each state. And it should not be surprising to you or to me that Indiana's most ridiculous law involved our broken alcohol laws. That's embarrassing. Facts show that C-stores and groceries have a superior compliance rate for responsibly retailing alcohol product. Our compliance rate and our record is better than the liquor stores. Common sense also indicates that the majority of customers drive to both C-stores and they drive to the liquor stores. So whether a customer purchases cold beer at a liquor store or cold beer at a C-store, the customer is driving away in some type of vehicle. Common sense also tells us that just because a vehicle is used to get the customer to an outlet where beer or wine can be purchased does not mean there's more of a propensity to drive and drink. If this was the case, then the bill you should be introducing is one that requires only walking or bike riding to liquor stores. Many members of this legislative body like to brag about how they've helped make Indiana attractive and conducive to business and quality employment, and they say it's because our state's progressive. But when it comes to alcohol, they say that Hoosiers can't be trusted to purchase when they want, where they want, and what temperature they want. And this is done under the guise of good public policy. Part of the excuse we've heard is, fuel and alcohol just can't be mixed. But as I've already talked about, the lack of bike ridership to liquor stores shows that's not the case. Let's be clear and understand that what some of our legislatures really mean when they vote against changing our alcohol laws in the past under good public policy is that the liquor store lobby is aiming up more money, more regularly, to their interest. As a lifelong Hoosier, I feel I can be trusted to purchase beer and wine where I want and at what temperature I want. 70% of Hoosiers in your constituents believe the same. That's what polls show. You're elected to represent your constituents, so I encourage you to do the right thing and support Senate Bill 26 and represent all the people you represent, not just a small special interest that you may meet with from time to time, whose only interest is to eliminate competition. I appreciate your time today.
Thank you. Question by committee members? Yes, Senator Taylor.
We like to claim people sometimes. I'm from Marion, Indiana, and I went to high school and middle school with your sisters, Christy and Kathy. And this is a respectable business from my hometown of Marion, Indiana. And we teach them to be tough and right to the point. So,
Well said.
Go Giants, Purple Rain.
Okay.
3 state championships in a row. Just want to give you that.
Thank you. Further question by committee members? Thank you. Matt Norris?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and members of the committee. My name is Matt Norris. I'm with Krieg DeVault, and I'm here today on behalf of the Indiana Petroleum Marketers and Convenience Store Association. The IPCA has over 100 corporate members that either own, operate, or provide fuel to the vast majority of the state's 3,000 convenience stores. Our members employ more than 54,000 of your constituents across the state. Mr. Chairman, I want to thank you for giving this bill a hearing. As was noted earlier, this is the first time we've had a chance to have a public discussion of the cold beer issue in a committee, and we thank you for that. And of course, this is on the heels of many months discussing this issue in the Alcohol Code Revision Commission. Thank you for your time on that body, as well to you, Senator Randolph. And as you all know, that body supported cold beer by an 8-7 vote, falling 1 vote short of an actual recommendation on the issue. You've heard from a number of our members already, and I won't belabor this, but I do want to provide some closing comments. As you've heard, our request is very simple. We simply want to take a product that we sell warm today, responsibly sell that product warm today, and sell that product cold. That's not revolutionary. In our minds, that's not an expansion of alcohol. We're not talking about new stores and new outlets selling a new product. It's changing the temperature at which we already sell that product. And it most certainly doesn't amount to the deregulation of alcohol, as some might claim. The state already entrusts Indiana's convenience store industry with selling chilled wine products, with a higher alcohol content, mind you, and we've shown to be responsible retailers of that product. Further, Indiana is the only state that differentiates the sale of beer based on temperature. We think it's time to end that differentiation, and the vast majority of Hoosiers agree with us. The Ball State Hoosier survey conducted last fall showed a 61-31 margin in support of cold beer. And that's on the heels of an IPCA poll conducted last year that showed support at 70%. And that support is justified based on our strong record of controlling the sale of alcohol to minors, a record that exceeds that of the liquor store industry. If you look at the ATC survey of alcohol compliance, where excise police would use minors under their direct supervision to try to buy alcohol from various locations, convenience stores failed on roughly 5% of those attempts. Liquor stores, meanwhile, failed at 8.5%. And that's not meant to criticize the liquor store industry. They take their responsibility very seriously, as do we. But I think it's fair to question why the industry more likely to sell to minors is given the exclusive right to sell cold beer. But our 5% failure rate is not good enough. That's why we continue to improve our training practices and policies, and why many of our members have a zero-tolerance policy when it comes to their clerks that sell alcohol to minors. But we're willing to go further than that. And I know we're not going to talk about amendments in this committee today, but my request of this committee would be to move this bill to the floor so that we can have a discussion on appropriate amendments that would make this bill even better. One of those amendments, back to a question you had earlier, Senator Taylor, is we would support language requiring clerks that ring up alcohol sales to be 21 years of age. Currently, in a grocery or convenience store, you can be 19 to ring up sales, although many of our members have an internal policy requiring them to be 21. We would support that as a state mandate. Pardon me. We would also approve a requirement that all of our clerks undergo state-approved training. Again, all of our members have internal training policies and practices, but we would support all of our clerks being trained under state guidelines. We put our record of compliance up against anyone else, but would be willing to support these other requirements if the legislature felt that were appropriate. And we also want to be fair to the liquor store industry. As I'm sure you know, liquor stores operate under a commodity restriction, which prohibits them from selling a number of products. There's no public policy served by that commodity restriction, and we would support lifting that. And we would support a delay in the implementation of cold beer. I believe Mr. Rickers spoke to this earlier. We would support delaying this implementation until July of 2019. This past summer in the Code Revision Commission, a liquor store owner testified that it took roughly 3 years for them to recover the value of the investment. Now, we know that only a small number of liquor store permits have been purchased for significant sums of money, but by delaying the implementation until 2019, that will give liquor stores sufficient time to recover the investment made on those permit costs. And finally, we would support a $1,000 annual increase in our permit costs to be used at the legislature's discretion. That revenue could be used for additional ATC enforcement efforts, or it could be used to compensate the liquor stores for any loss in value of their permit or whatever appropriate use the legislature deemed. We believe all of these provisions should be part of a comprehensive cold beer proposal And we would again ask this committee to vote this bill out so that we can have a discussion on these items on the Senate floor. As I said at the beginning, we simply want to take a product we sell warm and sell that product cold. We're not looking to expand the number of alcohol outlets. The existing quota system actually would prevent any significant increase in the number of convenience stores across the state. We're already responsible retailers of this product and would support additional regulations on our industry. With that, I'm happy to answer any questions, but I would ask for your support.
Question by committee member, Senator Taylor.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So who do you represent?
I represent the Indiana Petroleum Marketers and Convenience Store Association.
So as far as that goes, would you be the independent? So you would represent the independent guys, not the people we've heard from?
No, both actually. We would
Both?
represent the speedways, we would represent the Rickers, we would represent your 1 or 2 location convenience stores across the state.
Shell?
No, I don't believe Shell is a member.
None of the
I'm
Shell
looking back
gas
at our
stations?
director.
Now,
we may have members that provide fuel to those locations.
But what about the Shell gas stations?
Again, I'm yielding back to, they're branded. They're branded as Shell gas stations.
Right.
They're probably operated by a member of ours.
Okay.
And I can,
Good.
I can
Good.
give you more information on those specifics.
No need for that. I want to ask you a question because
Sure.
sometimes what happens, and I think this happens quite a bit, we assume that our districts are typical. And
Sure.
I suffer from the same mentality. But I think my district's atypical to a lot of the districts and I've got guys like Ricker who every time you go in their stores, there's the excellent customer service. You got clean stores, you got things like that. But then I find myself in a quagmire because I also have stores in my district. I got a convenience store 6-7 blocks away from each other, my district. Every other week there's a hearing for a gas station to go up, and that's all it goes up, and they sell everything from milk to everything else. Mm-hmm. So I find myself talking to them about issues like loitering and things like that. And I just want, I want to ask you a question. If you had a you're representing your people, and you went to one group and they kept saying, "It's my business. I want to run it. I want to run it my way. That's the way I'm going to do it. I'm not going to." What kind of investment do you see that in the community? Because that's my struggle right now. Is that probably some of your clients, pretty much. I mean, I can tell you in my district, I have 5 or 6 gas stations, convenience stores that I wish were never there, because when I go to them and say, "Hey, you got guys loitering out here on the parking lot," when people turn the corner, they almost hit them, and then the guy says, "Well, I can't tell them what to do on public sidewalks." Well, you can't, but can you make an effort? And they don't do anything. So I find myself, I'm just trying to address, you know what I mean? Sure. My district's a little different than some of the other ones. You know, like I said, we've got some good players too. We got some really good players in my district. But I got some interesting, and I just don't trust them, to be honest with you, to sell cold beer. When I walk into their stores, the first thing I see is not chips. It's a bottle of Old English or Colt 45. And that troubles me because kids walk in there. You know what I mean? Kids walk right by this stuff. So, you know, was there anything in the amendments to address that kind of issue? I mean, any kind of compliance stuff?
Well, let me say, number one, happy to discuss what those amendments might look like with you if we get this to the floor. Number two, I'm happy to sit down and chat with you if those are members of the IPCA, if there's a way that we can get involved in addressing some of your frustrations, and I appreciate your frustrations. I would say if there are laws being broken, then we would support, whether it's city police, ATC, what have you, enforcing those laws to the fullest extent. We're not going to defend practices that run afoul of the law.
What about moving the beer to the back of the store?
Well, if there were a problem with theft, I would say that actually allowing cold beer provides a more segregated environment. You're going to have that beer in a beer cave in some instances or in a cooler that's maybe easier monitored by the clerk up at the counter. And I know our members have already spoken, but I think they're already talking about how to do that so it's a more controlled environment. Some have even talked about installing alarms on those doors or those beer cave entrances so that it dings every time someone opens it, and you can look up and see, is it a minor, is it an adult? Okay. We take that responsibility seriously. I think that's it's bared out by our compliance record through the ATC. But if there are, individual, unique situations in your district, I'm happy to work with you in a way to address them.
That, man.
Sure.
I just want, okay.
Thank you.
Excuse me, thank you. Further question by committee members? Thank you, Matt.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Greg Ellis. Welcome, Greg. You conclude those members that are in favor of it. So thank you for being here today.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, committee members. If I'm concluding, I will be very brief then. My name is Greg.
You take your time. We've got time. You take your time.
My name is Greg Ellis. I am Vice President of Energy and Environmental Policy with the Indiana Chamber of Commerce, and I'm fortunate to work on the alcohol issues as well. This is not one of our big priority issues, but it is important enough that it's made our legislative agenda. The Chamber supports more logical and equitable policies that level the playing field and facilitate consumer convenience. Simply put, we support Sunday sales, cold beer. We also discourage underage and inappropriate consumption of alcohol by expanding education, substance abuse and wellness programs, and enforcement. And with that, I will conclude and answer any questions that you may have.
Thank you. Questions by committee members?
Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. I think that concludes the first half of those that are in favor of it. And I don't know about you, but I feel like the dialogue was excellent, and that was something that needed to be, a lot of that testimony needed to be heard. So I thank each and every one of the members who came forward to testify. So now we will move on. Grant Monahan.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. My name is Grant Monahan. I'm president of the Indiana Retail Council, and I'm pleased to be with you this afternoon. First, didn't get a chance to do this after your vote last week, but I want to sincerely thank you for your support for Sunday sales. Your unanimous support is something that I know Hoosier consumers want. They look forward to seeing Sunday sales pass, and I very much appreciate that. As you all well know, and members of the committee know better than I, the legislative process is a very dynamic one. It's always changing. The give and take is something that shifts from time to time, and I suspect that's always going to be the case and one of the values and one of the hallmarks of the democratic process. I stand before you today to express our opposition to the expansion of cold beer. This is a decision that we've made based on the fact that we believe that Sunday sales is, of the two issues, the most appropriate, the one that consumers most support and want to see happen. Beyond Sunday sales, we think that balance in the state's alcoholic beverage laws is important, and that includes the past Sunday sales in maintaining the status quo. And for that reason, we would urge your opposition to Senate Bill 26. Thank you.
Thank you. Questions by committee members? Thank you, Grant. Mark Webb.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and members of the commission. Mark Webb, I'm here on behalf of Merrill Liquors. Merrill Liquors is a small chain of packaged liquor stores located in the northwest part of Indiana. They hold 6 permits, and right now they have wrapped up in just those permits approximately $1.8 million in just 6 permits. The concern that we have is the vast difference in parity between the permit prices of packaged liquor stores and the respective permit prices of grocery stores, certainly up at least through 2008. As you all will recall, up until 2008, grocery stores weren't on quota, so those permits were available for the asking at the ATC. The liquor store permits have always been on quota, and it's, we feel very strongly that when you have folks that are still trying to pay off, in many cases, hundreds of thousands of dollars for a permit that they cannot get any financing for because the banks can't take security interests in permits, it sets a seriously unequal playing field. And so for that reason, we oppose Senate Bill 26. Thank you. Be happy to answer any questions.
Question by committee members? Thank you, Mark. Jay from Allied Liquors. Welcome, Jay. Thank you for being here today.
Thank you for having me. Good afternoon, Chairman Alting and all the committee members. I feel like I'm the youngest one here, but we'll go from here. My name is Jay Singh, Jatinder Singh, don't butcher it, it's Jay Singh. I own and operate 7 liquor stores here in Indianapolis, and I have myself and me and my brother, and we have about 3 other partners, and we have about 75 gas stations in Indiana. We have about, in my extended family, we have about 300 gas stations in the state of Indiana. And if we go further than that, if we go into 4 states, we have about 500 to 600 gas stations just in my family. And that's people that have 2 gas stations, people who have 10 gas stations, and that's how we build. My father came to Indiana in 1993, bought his first gas station in Couts, Indiana in 95, and then from there, we built from what we have. I'm on both sides of the spectrum, so I understand what's going on, but I have a concern about this bill. As with someone who has liquor stores and gas stations, as an operator of both gas stations and liquor stores in Indiana, I am immediately familiar with the challenges of both. Through my experience, I can tell you that because no one under 21 years old is allowed to in a liquor stores are a much safer place to market and sell cold beer. In convenience stores, all operations intentionally market, and we do market to minors. We do market to people who want candy. We do market to people like that. We want people to come in and to buy our products. Should the state allow cold beer to be sold in convenience stores and gas stations, we would be forced to carry and to remain competitive. In our stores in southern Indiana, we have warm beer. And we only have those licenses because we're trying to stay competitive with Speedway, with Rickers, with everybody else. Because without those licenses, we couldn't be competitive. And if tomorrow cold beer is passed, we would be forced to carry cold beer. And remember, we're marketing to younger kids. Shoplifting is a major concern for all retailers. Most minors are mediated by a liquor store and do not even try to enter. Even if they choose to try, we can card people as soon as they walk through the door. And in gas stations with high volume, we sometimes have a problem of checking who's coming in and who's going out. And the same cannot be said for our convenience stores. Beer, especially cold beer, is the first choice of underage drinkers. All gas station operators have a problem with shoplifting, even with warm beer. The increase in underage shoplifting of cold beer would be substantial should we be allowed to sell it. The reason we carry warm beer now is and like I said, is because to stay competitive. There's some statistics I'd like to share with everybody. According to a study done in 2016 by Business Insurance, alcohol beverages are the top 5 items that are shoplifted at all stores nationwide. Indiana's no different. And that's with meat. So if you have grocery stores with meat, that's top 5. Top 4 would make it if you bring it into a gas station. Investopedia reported the same. Alcohol is the top 5 items shoplifted. Businessinsurance.org goes to explain that when kids enter the rebellious phase, shoplifting alcohol is like the holy grail of misbehavior. All theft is done. All theft, 25% of all theft that's done is done by minors. That's a statistic. That's proven fact. And of that 25%, do we want kids coming into our stores and stealing cold beer unresponsibly? In conclusion, I would like for you to consider the nature of the challenges that a gas station owner faces today. Doing business with minors, shoplifting, even the fact that armed robberies are up in convenience stores 6.7% in 2016, should indicate to you that it is not good public policy to add cold beer into the mix. Please keep cold beer in age-restricted environments that we have worked well for so long. In the room and in the gallery are fellow gas station operators that feel the same way that would like to do. So there's about 15 members outside who have about 30 to 40 stores that are with me that are not part of my family, that have hands both in liquor stores and gas stations and understand the challenges as well. And with that, I'd like to thank everybody and thank you for your time. And sorry for being nervous.
Thank you. Comments by committee members? Yes, Senator Lannon.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Singh, thank you for your testimony. You're probably right. You probably are younger than everybody else on this committee. So, including you, Senator Taylor. Question I have, you mentioned that liquor is one of the top 5 items shoplifted out of a store.
Out of any retail location.
Of any retail location. And I'm sorry, where did you get that? I'm not doubting you. I'm just wondering about.
Investopedia and businessinsurance.org did a study.
Okay, very good. So, and then you mentioned the fact that, well, with liquor stores, you have to be 21 to go into the store.
Yes, sir.
But you're also, I'm sure, well aware that in Indiana, we allow grocery stores to sell hard liquor.
Grocery stores have a sectioned out area. So most grocery stores, if you go there, they're sectioned off.
Have you been to some of these big box stores where they've got the liquor bottle sitting right there on the aisle, and you can, I mean, I can take you to the Myers in my district, and people are, pushing kids in their carts up and down the aisles.
I don't represent big box stores. I represent liquor stores, and I represent myself as a gas station owner and a liquor store owner. I don't know too much about big box stores, but I can tell you in gas stations, given us the time or given us the opportunity, we would keep, you would have to make cooler space for cold beer.
But I get your point.
And you would keep it right next to the cold pop. And so when a 16-year-old comes in to get their Mountain Dew, they're going to look at that beer and they're going to understand it's there.
Your point is the accessibility of
the accessibility of having it there.
So underneath what you're talking about, really, we should not allow grocery stores to have liquor right out in the aisles, correct? Especially hard liquor.
I'm not saying anything to that extent. I'm just talking about liquor stores and gas stations.
Well, it would seem like it would be logical underneath your analysis that,
That's a conclusion somebody would have to make on their own.
All right. Well, thank you.
Thank you.
Question I have, you made an interesting comment because we've heard a lot of dialogue pertaining to convenience stores and what would happen if the cold beer would be passed. You made a comment on there that if cold beer would be passed, that you'd be, I quote you, forced to serve cold beer in your stores. Would you expand on that a little bit?
So Speedway was in here, and they said, 1,800 stores, they have cold beer, and not counting Indiana, 186 stores in Indiana that have beer. Is that correct? They would do it. We'd be forced to do it, just to compete with them.
Okay. Further question by committee members? Thank you very much. Sarah Ward?
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Senator Alting and committee, we understand that merchants need to make money, And we know that selling cold beer is very profitable.
Excuse me, let me interrupt. I apologize. Would you state your name just for the record, please?
Sarah Ward from Knightstown.
Great. Thank you, Sarah.
I'll start over. We do understand that merchants need to make money to stay in business, and we know that selling cold beer is very profitable, or this wouldn't even be discussed. But there are times when public safety need to be outweighed in consideration of profit, and I think this is one of those times. To allow cold beer in convenience stores is going to greatly increase the number of people who are going to grab their gas, grab their cold beer, and start drinking as they go down the highway. This is a very obvious a part of drinking and driving. And we feel that perhaps many of those who are pushing for cold beer would be the least responsible in not drinking and driving. So as has been already stated, it is true, alcohol and gas do not mix. So let's go ahead and use Hoosier common sense and be different from the other 49 states.
Comments by anyone on the committee? Senator Randolph.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just a question, okay? Sarah, if you can help me. I'm interested in your comment. You said drinking highway. How do you correlate the highway with selling cold beer at the service station?
I think if you have cold beer and you've picked up your gas, it's pretty obvious that you're going to start drinking as you continue on down the highway. When I stop and get iced tea, I'm going to drink it as I go down the highway because I'm hot and thirsty.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you for the comments. Thank you very much. Patrick Tam. Welcome, Patrick. And if you'd state your name and title for the record, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. Patrick Tam on behalf of the Indiana Association of Beverage Retailers. Real quickly here, you have heard a lot of testimony today, and we will try to be succinct. At the foundation of our presentation, we would like to remind the committee that alcohol is a dangerous substance that can destroy lives, families, and communities. We need strict and safe regulations that work to ensure access while making sure that it does not get into the wrong hands. Alcohol regulations in our state are long established and designed with safety in mind by taking positive steps to keep those substances that can be consumed immediately, cold beer and others, out of the wrong hands, particularly those underage or unaware. This is not a loophole or handout to packaged liquor stores, as some in the media or our friends in the gas station business have alleged, but instead an important and intentional safety public policy decision that this state has had. Our state's strict regulations of alcohol are working as intended to keep Hoosiers safe and should not be trivialized, particularly by those simply hoping to turn increased alcohol sales on street corners across our state into a windfall profit for themselves. National opinions on alcohol. From the Center of Alcohol Policy national survey conducted here recently in July of 2017, 89% of adults agree that it is very important to keep the American alcohol industry regulated. 4 in 5 Americans agree that since alcohol is different from other consumer products sold every day, it does require a different set of rules and states should regulate it. Health and safety issues in the same poll are much higher in priority than economic issues when it comes to crafting alcohol regulations. Americans agree the following health and safety issues are the top priority. 77% reduce drunk driving, 70% protecting health and safety, 62% reducing underage drinking, while 19% believe that allowing more businesses to sell alcohol are important. 81% of Americans are in support of the existing system that their states utilize for purchasing alcohol in that state and support their state's ability to regulate alcohol. 72% believe that the state's regulations are too lenient or about right. 90% of adults agree that it is easy to find a wide variety of beer, wine, and liquor in their community. For the sake of keeping Indiana communities and to prevent the forced closure of hundreds of multi-generational small businesses in our state, the IABR strongly urges the committee to reject Senate Bill 26. For my presentation today, I would like to briefly outline how we got here and make recommendations as to how to proceed. Our friends in the oil business are right about one thing. This is a debate about temperature. Simply put, cold beer is different than beer at room temperature because beer is intended to be consumed cold. Marathon also just today clearly stated that beer is a regulated product. There is not a free market for alcohol. As soon as the state auctions a permit, it goes away. The state has rightly decided to place more stringent regulations on alcohol for immediate consumption, like cold beer, because it presents an increased risk to individuals and communities. It's not hard to imagine scenarios where alcohol for immediate consumption poses obvious problems, ranging from underage drinkers looking to get a quick buzz before school, or the driver looking to take the edge off while they're going home. These rules are just one step in our system of alcohol laws that positively work to prevent the opportunity for high-risk activities that adversely affect individuals, families, and communities. Alcohol is the third leading lifestyle-related cause of death, meaning the death could be been prevented. Every state does not have a public policy intent of increasing alcohol sales. Why is that? Because there's social problems related to alcohol, both directly and indirectly. There's a complex and system of control must involve a set of regulations which work together in order to curtail excessive consumption of liquor. That is a direct quote from Toward Liquor Control, which virtually every state in the country will reference in their regulatory schemes. Who are Indiana package stores? Package stores are multi-generational businesses that are Indiana residents. We're engaged in our communities. We have long-term commitments to area nonprofits and charitable causes that are numerous. There is a direct relationship with regards to how our permits and permit density. Let's talk about permits. To address permit density and keep a firm check on alcohol-related harms, states like Indiana have created a permit structure that manages the sale of alcohol. The state of Indiana has the sole authority to regulate who can sell dangerous alcohol products and has created an admittedly complex system. The packaged liquor store permit is regarded as the most stringent and the hardest to obtain and maintain. Packaged liquor store permits are strictly limited and often cost more than hundreds of thousands of dollars at public auctions and oftentimes more in the secondary market. Packaged liquor stores operate under these strict state regulations that prevent underage or improper individuals from obtaining alcohol. We must be Indiana residents. We must locate within incorporated areas of cities and towns. No one under the age of 21. Our clerks have to be trained and licensed by the state. We can only sell items that are on a permissible commodities list. We have to be wholly apart from another business upon premises separated from another room or store in which another business is conducted. We are prohibited by law from being located near churches or schools, and they can only be owned by those Indiana residents. Packaged liquor stores are commissioned by the state to sell one thing, alcohol. They are strictly limited by the state to sell only certain items, ruling out common convenience store items that our friends in the gas station world have talked about today. These strict rules inform nearly every aspect of our business model of a packaged liquor store, from how the store is designed, square footage, to who can work inside the store. These stores are commissioned by the state, conceived, permitted, designed, built, and operated to only sell alcohol, and these owners have paid dearly for those privileges. We would love to be able to change our business model, but it's been handed to us by the legislature and by regulatory framework. Small business packaged liquor stores do not create our state's permitting system or the rules that govern our state's alcohol industry, but we have invested millions under the promise these rules would be maintained. Now some gas station owners are involved in an effort to upend this whole process and put packaged liquor stores simply out of business. You've heard some conversation today about compliance data. That compliance data has been brought up time and time and time again. And we'll talk about that here in a second. The issue of expansion of cold beer has continually come up before the legislature, not as a citizen-led effort, but as a quest by gas station owners to expand the number and variety of products they can offer in their local stores. They want to sell cold beer, as you've heard today, to increase their bottom line and will stop nothing to get it. They have repeatedly brought this issue before the legislature and failed. Going around the legislature, they have sued the state of Indiana and have failed both in the state and federal courts. They found a perceived loophole and went around the state in the ATC, which a practice which was shut down by this very legislature last year. In those court cases, compliance data has continuously been brought up. Judge Young heard those arguments, and here's what he had to say about them. Comparing statistics was problematic, irrelevant, and misplaced. Package stores are subject to much stricter regulations than other retailers. He effectively discarded any argument about compliance data because it's effectively comparing the NFL penalties to NBA fouls. We play on two completely different playing fields. The issue of expansion of cold beer was specifically considered by the Alcohol Code Revision Commission, a body that was organized by the legislature to look for ways that we can reform our alcohol laws. This commission was born out of the debacle of the 2017 legislative session, in which the legislature overwhelmingly reaffirmed their intent that Indiana law permits only packaged liquor stores to sell cold beer for carryout. Once we saw gas stations selling both hard liquor for the drink and carryout, as well as cold beer for the drink on premise, as well as for carryout, a lot of legislators took issue with that. After months of exhaustive hearings and testimony from all stakeholders on every side of the issue, the committee rightly decided to not recommend expanding the availability of cold beer. There was over 32 public citizens not engaged in the business of alcohol sales that testified. Everything from Drug-Free Marion County to the International Marketplace Coalition, to the Allen County's Drug and Alcohol Coalition, to police officers, to county sheriffs, all made sure their voices were heard by your Alcohol Code Revision Commission. Why were they so concerned? I think Sheriff Layton probably brought this to a clear point. In a letter that Sheriff Layton of Marion County submitted to the Alcohol Commission, and I'm quoting, "In fact, a study published in the Journal of Public Health and corroborated by a later study published in Criminology found that alcohol outlet density is the single greatest predictor of violent crime in neighborhoods, greater than other social and economic factors. Increased alcohol outlet density is also associated with increased levels of assault and other harms such as homicide, child abuse, and neglect, self-inflicted injuries, and road traffic injuries as well." Notably, the Alcohol Code Revision Commission did recommend allowing the sale of alcohol for carryout on Sundays, a measure that was supported by the Indiana Association of Beverage Retailers without reservations or conditions. This legislation, as you more than know, is now moving through the state legislature. Allowing the sale of alcohol for carryout on Sundays for the first time since Prohibition will be a landmark moment for Indiana, and we are grateful to the legislators and the members of the Commission who are working to make this possible. Let's take a broader view of the Indiana so-called antiquated alcohol laws. There has been much discussion, particularly in the media, about our state's antiquated alcohol laws. With Sunday sales now on the fast track to passage, many would be surprised at where our state stands in relation to other states when it comes to convenience or availability of alcohol products. Today, Indiana consumers enjoy a significant amount of convenience when it comes to the purchase of alcohol products for carryout. Beer and wine is already to be sold on store shelves in nearly every grocery store and convenience store in the state, and hard liquor is available on store shelves in not only packaged liquor stores, but also in pharmacy permit holders without any separation. This is in sharp contrast to many states that have organized a system that grants the state a monopoly on all alcohol sales. What does that mean? Control states. With many states going as far to force all residents to purchase alcohol in those state-owned package liquor stores and their locations. There are beer-only stores in the state of Pennsylvania where you have to pick up a case of beer. There are low-proof spirits being sold in Ohio. If you want to pick up a full-proof hard liquor in the state of Ohio, you have to go into a state-owned package store and you have to leave your cart and you cannot enter that store. You have restrictions on publicly traded companies in some states. If you're a publicly traded company, you cannot be selling hard liquor in some states. In some states, you have a number of permit restrictions. What does that mean? You cannot not hold more than X number of permits, 4 in the state of Texas, unless you have a bloodline relative. Where and how spirits and wine are sold. So we've talked about Ohio. Hard liquor is not in all these stores. In some states, you do have 3-2 beer still being sold, which for many of us seems like a history lesson. You still have dry, wet, and moist communities. And regardless, in multiple states, you may have state laws that allow certain things, but it requires local home rule to approve what they are doing in regards to their local communities. With Sunday sales, Hoosiers will enjoy some of the broadest access to alcohol products without compromising on safety. This is a win for all Indiana consumers and all retailers that sell alcohol. As responsible retailers, our members are continually looking at ways that our alcohol laws can be improved or reformed without compromising on safety. This is why we have been working for years, trying to figure out a path to Sunday sales for the first time since Prohibition. We continue to believe that making alcohol for immediate consumption, like cold beer, available on every street corner of the state would be a calamity for local communities and significantly increase alcohol-related harms. This would create an unworkable situation for law enforcement, and our existing alcohol regulatory and enforcement framework that has already been mentioned today is stretched too thin. This expansion would inflict irreparable economic harm on existing and often multi-generational small business packaged liquor stores would simply go out of business due to their investments of millions generationally and over decades. After all, the existing state regulatory system has caused many packaged liquor store permits to sell in excess of hundreds of thousands of dollars compared to just $1,000 for a grocery store permit. We respectfully request that in recognition of the years of legislative precedent and the recommendation of the Alcohol Code Revision Commission that this committee reject Senate Bill 26. The bill is half-baked, as you have heard from even gas stations today. It's bad public policy. We urge you to vote no on Senate Bill 26. We'd be happy to answer any questions that you may have.
Thank you, Patrick. Questions by committee members? Have none. Thank you, Patrick.
Thank you.
John from Crown Liquors. Welcome, John.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you, members of the committee. It is a pleasure, and it's an honor to be here today. And I particularly applaud the work of this chairman and this committee as it relates to Sunday sales. So thank you. Before I begin my prepared testimony, I'd like to tackle, if you will, a few of the issues raised by the gas station folks. Let's begin with enforcement. There are 65 excise officers on the street. There are 92 counties. I'm not exactly a mathematician, but that's less than one excise officer per county. Patrick Tam mentioned a federal district court case. In 2014, the state defended the rational basis for cold beer being sold by liquor stores. In that decision, and relating to enforcement, Judge Young in 2014 wrote, "There are 60 Indiana excise police officers performing law enforcement duties in the state who receive extensive training at the Law Enforcement Academy and on-the-job training." And I quote, "With so few trained excise police, the state will be challenged in terms of enforcement of the alcohol laws. For example, since it is illegal for a minor to enter a package store, if a young-looking person exits such a store with a package, an officer likely has reasonable suspicion to stop the person and inquire further. By contrast, Since it is not illegal for a person under the age of 21 to enter a convenience or grocery store, if a young-looking person exits that establishment with a parcel, an officer likely does not have reasonable suspicion to stop that individual and inquire further. That's the truth. I can also tell you that in and around 2008, this General Assembly, for the first time, defined gas stations as grocery stores. That allowed them to purchase grocery permits, which is the permit, of course, which allows them to sell warm beer and chilled wine. I've been in this business since 1995, and I could tell you when I got into this business, I used to see excise all the time. I used to see excise, or I was told, excise was parked in our parking lots Friday nights for hours, looking for minors, looking for intoxicants. When 2008 hit and the definition was changed, a lot of gas stations bought up all those grocery permits. I haven't seen excise nearly as much as I did. There are simply not enough officers. Enforcement is an issue. Let me speak to compliance. On behalf of the IABR, I'll tell you that one violation is one violation too many. Now, our opponents on this bill often refer to a study called the SAC study. I don't know exactly the methodology used in that study, but I won't argue. I suppose it showed that liquor stores had a worse compliance rate than gas stations or those who hold grocery store permits. But I could tell you, the Indiana ATC publishes all violations by month, per year on its website. We had 4 people in a room for 2 hours, and we counted them all up. And without a doubt, and as a matter of fact, between 2014 and August 2017, liquor stores had less violations than gas stations. That's less. That's all violations. Those are SAC violations, and any of those violations relating from when an excise officer went to a liquor store or went to another permittee and looked for minors and gave violations. On that issue, let me also go back to what Judge Young said on violations. And I quote, "In his 12-year career, Corporal Thixton, an excise officer, has made many more cases involving violations of Indiana's alcohol laws in convenience grocery stores than he has in packaged liquor stores. Further, comparing cases made at convenience stores with cases made at packaged liquor stores, the product that is most often or attempted to be purchased at convenience stores is beer." Judge Young, in his decision, goes on to say, "Indeed, the Indiana Excise Police seize and destroy more cold beer," he's citing from testimony from excise, "more often than any other alcoholic beverage. In addition, the majority of these cases involve minor possession of cold beer." We've heard about monopoly. It's not true. There are approximately 5,500 restaurant permits in the state of Indiana. While I don't know the exact number, I strongly believe that more than half of them are allowed to sell carry-out alcohol, including cold beer, and they do. In rural areas all throughout this state, that's common practice. It is not a monopoly. Commodity restriction, or rather the lifting of the commodity restriction in exchanging for allowing cold beer sales everywhere. It's nonsense. I'm in no position to sell batteries. I don't know anything about selling eggs. Our stores aren't built that way. Our stores are built for one thing, and that's to ensure the most responsible retail environment for the sale of alcoholic beverages. Our stores are smaller than gas stations. We aren't on hard corners. It just doesn't make sense. All right, now for my testimony. Members of this committee could look at 2 important rationales in denying the expansion of cold beer sales. First is the devastating economic harm it does to our industry. The second is the certain increase of alcohol-related harms due to expansion of both cold beer and high-proof malt liquor to thousands of gas stations overnight. First, I'll address economic harm. Expansion of cold beer and malt liquor to gas stations would be catastrophic for Indiana's liquor store industry. Of the 925 active liquor stores, many will close. Those liquor stores left standing will be hurt, and I mean hurt badly. As an industry, our cold beer sales average over 50% of total sales. Let me make that clear, over 50% of total sales. Stated another way, allowing expansion of cold beer is pulling the rug from underneath us. It's not fair to change public policy on how alcohol is sold in ways that harm those businesses that have invested based on current public policy, good public policy, which such public policy was established by this General Assembly and not by what they call the small and powerful liquor stores. If I can make one thing perfectly clear, it's this. If there is no change in the cold beer law, no business will be harmed. It is simply wrong to do catastrophic harm to an industry which is doing business in good faith for decades. Our businesses are Hoosier-owned, and many are family-owned, and many of those family-owned have been family-owned for generations. A vote to expand cold beer sales is a vote to help gas stations put liquor stores out of business. Liquor stores have paid dearly for the privilege to serve as a responsible steward of alcohol sales. The prices paid by liquor stores for permit far exceeds the cost of a $1,000 grocery store permit. Again, that is the permit that allows gas stations to sell warm beer. Importantly, and I ask you to note, that the prices paid by liquor stores for permits is only part of our investment equation. Liquor store owners have invested in real estate, fixturing, and other significant investments associated with creating nearly 10,000 Hoosier jobs. Our loss is more than just the cost of the permit. It's about the loss of our total business valuation. Now to the rationale that expansion of cold beer will lead to a certain increase in alcohol-related harms. Patrick Tam said this. We all know it. Many public safety and grassroots advocates have testified against cold beer expansion for years at the General Assembly and at the recent study commission that did not recommend expansion of cold beer sales. These advocates have empirically and emotionally testified why it's a bad idea to expand cold beer sales. As mentioned at the study commission meetings, advocates included law enforcement, including a police captain, and a letter from a county sheriff, addiction specialists, a doctor, neighborhood groups, clergy, and even parents who have suffered great tragedy due to alcohol. It is these advocates that could better champion the dangers of cold beer expansion than me. However, I can state two things. Number one, that increasing the number of cold beer outlets overnight is a terrible idea. And two, our regulatory system on alcohol is not broken. In preparing for the summer study commission meetings, we began to take a very close look at the alcohol industry and how safe Indiana really is on alcohol-related harms versus other states. One thing is very clear. The evidence shows that our laws are working as intended and are keeping our families safe. Annual data from the National Highway Transportation Safety Administration shows Indiana ranked among the top 3 safest states for alcohol-related fatalities as recently as 2014 and 2015, ranking number 2 in 2014. Again, our system is not broken. According to the Fatality Analysis Reporting System, Indiana's 12 to 20-year-olds have less incidents of underage alcohol consumption and binge drinking than minors in Ohio, Illinois, and Michigan. Expansion of cold beer and high-proof malt liquor will undoubtedly move the needle in the wrong direction on public policy. In summary, we are here for one reason only. That reason doesn't relate to public safety. That reason doesn't relate to convenience for customers. It's because just a few deep-pocketed gas station owners want to make more money. That's it. And they want more profits at the expense of the safety of the people of Indiana, and at the expense of the liquor store industry, who has proudly served this state since the end of Prohibition. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Question by committee members. Yes, Senator Sadlin.
John, I apologize. I missed, you're representing Crown Liquors, but I missed your last name.
My last name is Cinder. I should have started off, and I apologize. My name is John Cinder, S-I-N-D-E-R. John is J-O-N, there's no H. I am one of the owners of Crown Liquors. We're a chain that operates in central Indiana, and I am also chairman, the proud chairman, of the Indiana Association of Beverage Retailers.
All right, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Senator. Further questions? Thank you very much, John.
Thank you.
Steve from Cedar Creek Carryout. Welcome, Steve.
Thank you, Senator Alting. Thank you for inviting me to be up here. I would like to start off, if it's okay with you, I have a handout I'd like to give the committee. You want me to do it, or you have somebody else who wants?
We'll have someone do that.
Okay.
Can someone, thank you, right in front of you, Steve. She'll get that. Thank you very much.
My name is Steve Corman. Along with my wife, Natalie, we own Cedar Creek Carryout in Grable and Cedar Creek Beverage in Leo, both which are located in Allen County, up Fort Wayne area, if you don't know where that is. In 1982, my parents purchased their first store. Today, I'm a second-generation small business packaged liquor store owner, and these stores support me along with my wife and 7 children. I'm a former chairman of the Indiana Association of Beverage Retailers, and I'm here today to bring in my perspective that I believe is similar to hundreds of other small business packaged liquor stores that are located in Indiana's rural communities. In the last 36 years, the environment for selling alcohol in Indiana has changed significantly. After Prohibition, the state of Indiana set up a tight regulated model to sell dangerous substance we know as liquor. This system controlled the access of alcohol, keeping out of reach of minors. Since that time, the continual chipping away of the public policy laws that the legislature gave the state decades ago, things have changed a lot. With gas stations given grocery permits to sell beer and grocery stores given pharmacy permits to sell liquor, alcohol is available almost everywhere. My town of Leo, where one of our stores is located, has a population of just 3,603 people. Serving this small community is a 3-way tavern, an American Legion, a Rickers gas station, a Shell gas station, a CVS, and our liquor store. That's 6 for 3,603 people. It's important to note in these small towns like Leo, it is routine for taverns and restaurants to sell alcohol, including cold beer, for carryout, and have done so for decades. Contrary to what we have heard from the media and many lobbyists on the other side, packaged liquor stores do not have a monopoly on cold beer for carryout. If the 2 gas stations in Leo were permitted to sell alcohol for immediate consumption like cold beer, I know that my multi-generational stores would be forced to close. I have brought a report, which I've given it to you from my CPA, showing the percentage of lost beer sales due to the expansion of cold beer that would turn my business that is profitable today into a business which would have little chance to succeed. Given my margin on beer and both my actual and fixed variable cost, I close my doors if I only lose 25.3% of my beer sales if gas stations are allowed to sell cold beer. While I'm not an economist, I can say I'm very confident that 60%, which is more than double my margin of staying even in beer sales, is the least of the effect of cold beer sales expansion. The fact is, for 2 generations, my family has worked hard and played by the rules. In that time, we built and invested in these stores, working on behalf of the state to safely sell alcohol under specific rules regulating the sale of alcohol for immediate consumption like cold beer. We're glad to follow strict guidelines from the state that regulate where my stores can be, what I can sell, who I can hire, and who may enter my stores. We made these investments with the knowledge that the state would uphold their end of the bargain, and to change the rules now would jeopardize mine and my family's livelihood. That is unjust. I'd always hoped to either pass on the business to one of our children or to sell them for our retirement. by the way things are going now, there won't be anything else left to sell. I would urge you to keep the state's promises and not expand the availability of cold beer. Please reject this bill. I did make a couple notes. If anybody's curious where I get my 60% of beer sales loss, I think it's probably even greater. The gentleman over here from one of the gas stations said that in Indiana, he only sells 10% of the beer in Indiana that he sells in other states. So if you increase that, that's a 1,000% increase from 10% up to the other states. I don't know where you think that 1,000% is going to come from, but I'm pretty sure I know it. My stores, talking about getting violations and such, we've been carding everybody since the year before we had my favorite law of carding all alcohol sales. And we've had 0 violations in 6 or 7 years, whatever that's been. And lastly, we're not just talking about the value of a permit. These are businesses. Traditionally, when you buy a liquor store or sell a liquor store, what the value you use is 30 cents on the dollar. So you take $1 million a year sales in alcohol, that store should cost $300,000 to buy, plus inventory, plus real estate. These guys want to get into this business for the price of a couple of burritos. If they want to get into our business, they should pay like we did to get into our business. And with that, I would take any questions.
Thank you. Question by committee members? Thank you very much. Nathan?
Thank you, Senator.
Welcome, Nathan.
All right. Good afternoon. Chairman Alting, committee, thank you very much for having me today. My name is Nathan Holsebush, and I can spell that if you need me to. And I'm president and CEO of Taxman Brewing in Bargersville, Indiana. 4 years ago, my wife and I founded Taxman. And since that time, our annual beer production has grown from 750 barrels to over 4,000. And last year, we were able to add a second restaurant in Fortville, Indiana. With our brewery and 2 tap rooms, we've been able to expand our workforce to over 100 full and part-time employees. We're currently the largest self-distributing brewery in Indiana and sell to about 400 retail customers each month. After 4 years and almost constant growth, we've reached 55,000 cases per year equivalent, which gets us to 0.1% of the total beer sold in Indiana. So we're extremely small still. We're here today to talk about cold beer, but what concerns me isn't the temperature of the beer, it's the potential impact this legislation has on the path to market for local craft brands. When Taxman started packaging beer in bottles and cans in 2015, our path to market began in liquor stores. The liquor stores we worked with were locally owned, and most were eager, or at least willing, to bring our new beer into the market. They understood our limitations, and they had the flexibility to create space for our products. After working with liquor stores almost exclusively for the last 2 years, we were able to build our brand and refine our product mix enough to secure shelf placement at larger box retailers. It was the relationships early on with liquor stores that provided us this opportunity, and today they still account for over 50% of our packaged retail sales. From my perspective, the greatest threat to the expansion of Indiana craft beer is losing access to market. There are over 130 breweries in Indiana, and we still collectively account for less than 4% of total beer sales. So it's very easy with that scenario to substitute our local products for larger craft brands that are nationally owned now and for brands from larger regional breweries. Liquor stores are currently the gateway to market for local craft beer into the packaged market. So if we pass cold beer legislation, and if that causes liquor stores to close, then that path to market for local craft beer becomes much more difficult. I urge everyone today not to oversimplify this matter. It impacts more than just the temperature of the beer we purchase. If we do not roll out this legislation thoughtfully, the unintended consequence could very well be the loss of local brands in the Indiana market. Thank you for your time and consideration. I'm open for any questions.
Question by committee members? Yes, Senator Sadlin.
Just a comment, Mr. Chairman. Nathan, thanks for coming down today. You're a little bit south of my district in Johnson County, but thank you for taking the opportunity to plant your business in downtown Bargersville. You took a risk. It's turned out well, and anybody that's passing through there, I'd recommend the restaurant.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Further questions? Thank you. Jim Perrucker.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Jim. Welcome.
Members of the committee, my name is Jim Perrucker, and I stand before you today representing the wine and spirit distributors of Indiana and ask for your consideration of the following as you deliberate on Senate Bill 26. As you've heard, I think, from multiple people, the Senate Bill 26 would have a devastating effect on packaged liquor stores. I think this is further evidenced by the proponents' willingness and really changing the debate to talk about compensating liquor stores for their losses now as the debate has changed. While this is primarily a fight between two economic interests, I'd ask you to consider how important packaged liquor stores are for wholesalers, suppliers, and Hoosier consumers as brands are developed. Having a vibrant package store segment, arguably this is the best package store industry in the country, is very important for consumer choice due to the assortment of products they're able to carry. Notably, this would negatively impact local distilleries, breweries, and wineries, as you just heard, as their ability to reach consumers would become much more difficult as big box and convenience stores take over the marketplace. Picking one aspect of Indiana's alcohol and comparing it to other states is not a very good gauge because every state is different in all regards. You heard that from Patrick Tam earlier. This line of thinking is both degrading to Indiana and disregards the fact that maybe we've gotten it right all these years and the mix works here for us. Access always needs to be looked at in totality, not in a vacuum of who can do what or who can do this or who can do that. I thought one of the most telling moments in the Summer Study Commission was when one of the large C-store chains, after making the claim Indiana was backwards and the only state in the country where they could not sell cold beer, admitted that there were many states, in fact, where they weren't allowed to sell beer at all, warm or cold. Another interesting fact in this space is that the state of New York, in the state of New York, grocery stores aren't allowed to sell wine at all. This isn't a consumer convenience, or this isn't a customer convenience issue like Sunday sales. It's an issue that dramatically shifts who sells the products and will cause a significant ripple effect within the industry well beyond the retailers that will be felt by consumers. I, like you, go to church on Sunday morning and get asked all the time because of what I do about Sunday sales. I don't ever get asked about cold beer. Cold beer is not an issue that I think the general public truthfully cares about that much. We as the wine and spirit distributors believe that the more you make convenience and big box stores look like packaged liquor stores, the more packaged liquor stores will be forced to look and act like C-stores and big box stores. What I mean by this is that liquor stores aren't going to start selling gas, coffee, lettuce, eggs, and tennis shoes to grow their way out of the lost sales due to the expansion of cold beer sales. Instead, liquor stores will be forced to stock fewer brands, fewer flavors, and fewer sizes of products in the beverage alcohol category. Walmart's a wonderful retailer where you can find commonly consumed alcoholic beverages at very competitive prices, but they aren't the place where you'll find a dozen different port wines, a selection of 50 different vodkas or bourbons, or the obscure single malt scotch, wine, or craft beer that you're looking for. The result of expanding the availability of cold beer will be fewer packaged liquor stores, with those remaining giving consumers fewer choices because they will be forced to carry less inventory of fewer products. Passage would also have the effect of squeezing out smaller brands and suppliers, such as local distilleries, breweries, and wineries, who have a very difficult fight for shelf space in the large chain where many purchasing decisions are made in regional or national offices in Bentonville or Cincinnati. For all these reasons, the wine and spirit distributors of Indiana ask you to vote no on this issue of expanding cold beer sales to convenience stores. With that, I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Any question by committee members? Thank you, Mr. Perrucker. Lisa Hutchison. Welcome, Lisa. Thank you for being here today.
Thank you, Chairman Alting and committee members. I'm Lisa Hutchison. I'm director of the Indiana Coalition to Reduce Underage Drinking, and I'm here speaking on behalf of our many partners, as well as Mental Health America of Indiana, where I'm the vice president. As part of my testimony, you should or will receive a letter that I have provided for you with 10 supporting organizations. First, I think it's worth noting that 1/3 of adults don't drink any alcohol at all, and 1/3 consume no more than one alcoholic beverage a week. However, alcohol is a drug and remains the most consumed drug by minors and adults in Indiana, with beer being the most consumed alcoholic beverage by adults and the second most consumed by youth. When we as a society made the decision to allow lawful consumption of the drug alcohol, we also agreed to accept the consequences that accompany that consumption. Some of those consequences are: the rate of alcohol-related visits to U.S. emergency departments increased nearly 50% between 2006 and 2014. 16 to 18% of all adults in Indiana are binge drinkers and consume an average of 7 drinks in one sitting. 79% of Hoosiers admitted for treatment are admitted for alcohol abuse. 34% of Indiana college students binge drink, and that's higher than the national average. The cost of excessive drinking in Indiana is $4.4 billion a year, or $1.96 a drink, $689 per capita. In terms of impaired driving, independent of economic and demographic factors, single vehicle nighttime fatal crashes were most strongly related to the sale of beer. Beer was the most prevalent beverage type usually consumed among injured patients who were interviewed in emergency departments. Convenience, that's the word that always comes up when we discuss Sunday sales and cold beer. I would argue, as others have, that alcohol is already copiously convenient, literally available on most every corner in every community in our state, nearly 24 hours a day. Only those hours between 3 and 7 can you not purchase it. Here in Marion County, for example, there are 2 outlets per every 1,000 people. High alcohol outlet density is associated with several social harms among neighborhoods in and around the outlets, such as disorderly conduct, noise, domestic violence, child abuse, neighborhood disruption, public nuisance, and property damage, as well as an increase in high-risk drinking. I have soon-to-be 2 teenagers, one junior and one almost 13. Kids go to convenience stores a lot. Mine is there several times a week. 47.5% of adolescents ages 13 through 16 report visiting a convenience store at least weekly. From an industry publication called Convenience Store Decisions, their research shows that teen shoppers stop in a convenience store 14% more frequently than adults over 30, and 2/3 of teens ages 16 through 20 purchase from 10 or more C-store categories. Of the top 10 best-selling products at a convenience store, 3 of those were flavored beer products. And in an industry publication of the National Association of Convenience Stores, their report is that half of all beer transactions are for single-serving, ready-to-consume beer. From our annual college survey, we know that 49% of minors who drink report drinking beer. 12% of minors said they purchased alcohol from a retailer, and 63% of those did so without an ID. We do not need to make beer more convenient for minors. The argument has been made that cold beer will have a great economic impact on our state. I contend that the costs associated with these policy changes will bring about negative consequences that may far outweigh any perceived benefit. If legislators want to generate true economic impact with the greatest benefit to the state, they should consider an alcohol tax to fund a forensic prevention and treatment fund for evidence-based programs and enforcement. Selling alcohol is a privilege, not a right. Cold beer is not a change in temperature, it's a change in the way that alcohol is regulated. It's an expansion of permits, probably, but definitely an expansion in the volume of beer that will be sold. The research is clear and convincing, convenience will come with a cost. Are we willing to pay it?
Thank you very much. Any questions by committee members? Thank you, Lisa, we appreciate it. Captain Kevin Summers. Welcome, Captain. Please state your name and any titles that you have.
Good afternoon, Senator Alting. I appreciate the opportunity to speak for you this afternoon and the recognition there. Senator Alting and members of the Senate Policy Committee, thank you very much for the opportunity to speak with you today. My name is Captain Kevin Summers of the Kokomo Police Department. I've been a member of that unit for 20 years. In my roles, I've had several opportunities to serve as a supervisor of our traffic unit and community service unit. I've also served as a DARE officer where I've helped kids learn the skills that need to stay away from the dangers of drugs and alcohol. As a law enforcement officer and a community leader, I've seen firsthand the dangers and heartbreaking realities of alcohol abuse. There's no doubt that alcohol, when used improperly or unsafely, can destroy lives, families, and our communities. I'm here today to speak specifically about the proposed expansion of alcohol for immediate consumption like cold beer to convenience stores and gas stations. I believe that this is a misguided policy that will adversely affect Indiana communities like my community in Kokomo. The simple fact is that the proliferation of alcohol attracts crime. Multiple studies have proven that the single greatest predictor of violent crimes in neighborhoods is the alcohol outlet density, more than social and economic factors. Multiple studies have proven that greater outlet density is directly associated with increased incidence of alcohol-related harms, including alcohol abuse, domestic violence, child abuse, and drunk driving. Drastically expanding the number of alcohol outlets for alcohol for immediate consumption like cold beer to virtually every gas station, convenience store, big box store, or other retail outlet will create an unworkable situation for law enforcement like myself, who are already understaffed, to effectively police existing outlets, for further compounding the problem. From a practical purpose, the existing cold beer laws are good public policy. Practically, when it comes to addressing these problems of underage drinking, it is about the access and the opportunity. Current regulations prohibit those individuals under the age of 21 from entering a packaged liquor store where they can obtain either cold beer or hard liquor for immediate consumption. To the contrary, we have found that gas stations, convenience stores are some of the most popular hangouts for high school students before and after school. The proliferation of cold beer at these outlets would create a tantalizing opportunity for underage Hoosiers unaware of the life-threatening dangers that alcohol presents as being abused. To make matters worse, studies have shown that the most popular alcohol brands for underage drinkers aged 13 to 20 are Bud Light, Smirnoff malt beverages, and Budweiser, precisely the beverages that gas stations and convenience stores are seeking to carry. These beverages also are marketed in fruit flavors like strawberry, lime, grape, green, apple, and etc. Expanding access to alcohol for immediate consumption like cold beer to gas stations and convenience stores is a bad public policy. It is driven by profit-seeking CEOs and lobbyists that want to put our streets and communities at risk just to increase the bottom line. As a police officer, I have spent my entire career working to protect Hoosiers, and I know when it comes to safety, you can never compromise that decision. If passed, this policy will unnecessarily expose Indiana communities like mine to danger that will make my job more difficult and other officers, and I would urge you to oppose any such measure. I would just add to that, as I spoke last time, that I don't believe when you've investigated and went to a accident that involves alcohol and related tragedies, and you have to make notification to those families after that, and knowing that we're going to put more opportunities out in our communities here for that type of location and convenience, it truly boils down to the decision as legislators to put our people and the safety and welfare of our communities above any and all profits that could ever be foreseen with this. And I would acknowledge, I didn't get her name, but the young lady that spoke before me, if that doesn't impact us with all that information that she's exposed us to, and as an investigator and seeing crime that's committed in and around these locations and put more out there, That is an extremely bad policy, and let's look at the people and their safety and welfare over the profits. Thank you.
Thank you. Any question by committee members? Yes, Senator Sadler.
Just a comment, Captain. Thank you for your comments, and more importantly, thank you for your service to your community.
Thank you, sir.
Further questions? Thank you, Captain. We appreciate your testimony.
Thank you.
Matt Bell.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Matt.
Committee. Thank you so much for the opportunity to rise and address you today. My name is Matt Bell. I'm a principal at Catalyst Public Affairs Group and here today on behalf of Big Red Liquors. Big Red Liquors owns and operates 57 packaged liquor stores across the state of Indiana, striving every day to be the most responsible retailer of liquor and alcohol in our great state. That's a responsibility that they take seriously, going well beyond the laws that are on the books, to instill programs within the store that give them the best opportunity to prevent what is a regulated drug from falling into the wrong hands, from being used illegally or irresponsibly. Because when it is, as has been discussed to great extents, the impact of using alcohol irresponsibly or illegally can be devastating to families, to communities, and to businesses. You know, we had the opportunity to enjoy much of the testimony that occurred over the summer. Like many people in this room, a fair amount of my summer vacation was in this chamber listening to folks make an argument against or for and against cold beer. Let's be clear, it's not a new argument. You know, Patrick and John Sender and those guys really alluded to it well. We've been arguing about this for a long time, for decades. You know, this was a fight in the legislature 10 years ago. It's an annual effort that Senator Boots brings to keep this in front of his colleagues. When we haven't been successful in the legislature, we've gone to the courts. Convenience stores and those folks have sued the state of Indiana. We've used taxpayer dollars to defend those suits. And every time the court said, listen, you're just not right. The law is constitutional, and you're going to have to live under it. But the conversation continues. Last spring, we decided that we wanted to be restaurants, sell burritos and cold beer. Today, we want to be gas stations again. I'm not sure what we're going to want to be tomorrow, but I am going to guarantee you this. The folks who want to extend this privilege, boost their profits through the sale of cold beer won't go away. They'll find a new avenue, find great attorneys who will help them find it, find another loophole, and they'll be back here again. That won't change. Tell you what else won't change. This is information that Lisa Hutchison shared today and has shared over and over again. It won't change that Indiana has an addiction epidemic. It won't change that alcohol is the world's greatest known gateway drug. And that when we make it more available, all we can expect are greater problems down the road. Won't change that folks will continue to fight for market share here. Won't change that there'll continue to be competitive pressures. Man, there have been some stories told throughout the summer. A monopoly on the sale of cold beer. Drive through downtown Indianapolis. See how many different places you can buy cold beer and tell me if there's a monopoly. These guys compete tooth and nail. You go to a packaged liquor store board meeting, sometimes you have to pull them off each other's throats because they just want to go and compete against each other more. A monopoly. Nobody has a monopoly on cold beer any more than restaurants have a monopoly on food. It just doesn't stand up. We've talked a lot about 71% of Hoosiers wanting this. You know, I give a lot of credit to the public relations campaign that's been run by the advocates for the expansion of cold beer since March. It's been effective. It's been all over the place. They've reached a lot of people. Yes, 71% of Hoosiers did say, let's expand cold beer. In July, 86% of Americans, according to a Harvard-Harris poll, said let's legalize marijuana. That's 15% more than said legalize cold beer in Indiana. So if we're going to govern by polls, whose and which and when? But I don't think that's what you want to do. I think you want to stand up and pass good public policy. I think you realize that when the advocates for expansion of cold beer say, let's keep this moving to consider some common sense amendments, you don't have to do that. Said, let's keep it moving to add an amendment to the bill that will make all clerks 21 years old. House Bill 1491 will do that for you. Heard in committee today. You don't need to advance that in order to have that conversation. State-approved training, also in House Bill 1491. Don't need to move that bill to have this conversation. They're having it in the chamber right across the hall. Mr. Sanders talked about the red herring that the commodity restriction is. Let's lift it. It'll be a gift. It won't. There's no way John Sender or anybody else in his industry, even if they wanted to, could possibly buy product at the price that grocery stores and convenience stores are able to do it because they don't have the volume. So they can't compete selling chips because they won't be able to buy it for the same price. It's simply a red herring. Then today we heard a new one. We heard, let's create a state fund that'll help pay liquor stores back for the value of their licenses. Seems to me like the advocates for the expansion of cold beer are asking for a beer bailout from the Indiana taxpayer. Let's increase excise taxes. Let's charge every tax-paying Hoosier who has a drink 25% more. Then let's take their money to create the opportunity for me to sell cold beer. But I don't know why you want to go home and explain to your constituents that you're paying more per drink because we needed to bail out Big Oil. We needed a beer bailout, and that now rests on every drink that you'll take. That's bad policy. There's no reason to put that on the backs of consumers. 7,500 potentially new cold beer outlets around the state. It's a lot of new places for folks to access that product. A lot of new places to put a gateway drug. A lot of new opportunities for people to experience illegal substances if they're under the age of 21 that often lead to a lifetime of problems. There are lots of stores today, convenience stores, that don't sell beer. Will they if they have the opportunity to sell cold beer? Will 7,500 become 9,000? Why? Why? Why, when we're facing an unprecedented addiction epidemic in the state of Indiana, are we considering doing this? Now, y'all are tired, and rightly so. Those who sat through the summer study committee have heard so much of this before. So many revolutionary ideas out there. At one point this summer, if y'all remember, the attorneys for our friends in Big Oil stood up and said, let's just eliminate all quotas across the state. Let's not have them. Let's just let caveat emptor and buyer beware. Let's let the market sustain as many outlets as we can have. That's the vision they put forward this summer. It's not the right vision for Indiana. It's not the vision for your communities. You've set good public policy in this state. It's a little bit different for a packaged liquor store than the challenge faced by some other retailers because you created them. You made them. We didn't make shoe stores that, you know, and many of those shops on Main Street that have suffered due to internet commerce, but you made these guys. They've served you well. They've served Indiana citizens well. They compete in a terribly, terribly difficult market every day. They do so with dignity. They do so with honor. They do so with a commitment to upholding the law. Are there violations? Unfortunately, and one is too many. That's correct. John's right. Comparing them is just not appropriate, right? I mean, that's like saying, hey, we catch more people speeding in a speed trap. That's right. Same thing. You're going to send more officers to a liquor store because that's where you have the greatest opportunity. Just no reason to make this change today. You know, we've heard plenty of attacks on our antiquated alcohol system. She stood up pretty good. It was Winston Churchill who once said, hey, democracy is the worst form of government of all. Well, except for all the others. I think Indiana's alcohol laws may well be the worst of all, except for all those others. Places like LaForest, Texas, where you can get arrested for having more than 3 sips of beer while standing up. Our great neighbors in Ohio who prohibit the use of Santa Claus in alcohol ads. We can go to the state of Utah where a bartender has to hold a drink under the counter to make it behind what they refer to lovingly there as their Zion curtain. Yeah, there's some weird laws out there. It's legal to drink beer and ride a horse in Colorado. I mean, there's one town, oh no, it's in North Dakota. You can't buy beer and pretzels at the same time. I don't think Indiana's alcohol laws are a detriment to anything in this state. What I think they do is they promote the responsible use of a product. You know, alcoholism is significant. Anybody who heard the testimony from parents who lost children this summer, from physicians, from community advocates who said, we fight the scourge of addiction every day in our community. How can you do this to us? Who heard other law enforcement officials that have been mentioned today, and Captain Summers before me, say, please don't make my job more difficult. Has to say, public policy is the name of our committee. It's what we're charged with. We don't govern by polls. We're sitting here to discover facts, and our facts say that expanding the sale of cold beer is flat wrong for Indiana. We ask you to oppose Senate Bill 26 in this chapter of this debate in the hopes that we won't have to continue it in the near future. Thank you.
Question by any committee members? Having none, thank you. Senator Boots, would you like to close?
Yes, please.
And thank you for being patient.
Thank you for allowing me to bring this bill. Thank you for hearing it. Thank you for the committee members that have participated in this. Appreciate everybody that's brought their viewpoints, et cetera, et cetera. I just want to make several things clear. This bill does not ask for an increase in quotas. It does not ask for the increase in any outlets that are going to sell a legal product. One thing I want to point out is that if you want to violate drunk driving laws, the majority of the people that violate those laws are buying their alcohol in a tavern. They're buying cold beer, they're buying alcohol, whatever it is, they're drinking and driving at the same time. They're not buying their booze or their beer at a convenience store or a grocery store. And the majority of those people in the commission meeting that we heard this summer, several people talked about the tragedy of somebody going across the median and killing a family, et cetera, et cetera. When you drill down into it, almost every case, that individual came from a bar. Where most of the drunk driving violations occur, as soon as a bar closes, 3 o'clock in the morning or whatever it is. It's not people that are going to buying a package, taking it home and consuming it. It's people who are consuming it in a valid or a legal entity to consume their alcohol. You know, all convenience stores want to do is compete. I want to point out that the liquor stores all pointed out that in 2008, convenience stores, grocery stores got the permission to sell alcohol, beer. Didn't put them out of business. There's not one less liquor store, and they're now more than willing to pay $100,000 for the right to sell alcohol. So that's not an issue. The issue is not that they you know, we want to reduce the number of places that are selling alcohol. Every time there's an increase in the quota availability, liquor stores are there ready to take it on and to pay whatever they have to get that permission. So my point, I guess, is that cold beer is not the negative thing that everybody makes it out to be. I can tell you when I was overseas, and Senator Sandlin had a different experience because he had access to ice. But when I was in the military, I didn't have access to ice. And warm beer is just fine. I could drink warm beer all day long. It wasn't a deal. And so if you're an alcoholic and you want to consume alcohol, you can drink warm beer just as easily as cold beer. So I don't think cold beer is going to be a pathway to alcoholism. It's just not there. So I appreciate the opportunity, Mr. Chairman. Thank you for hearing the bill, and I hope that we can get this moving, and so I don't have to bring this back every year going forward. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Senator Boots. Let me say in closing that this is exactly what the chair wanted to accomplish today, was to bring both sides in, have a good discussion, a good dialogue to topic that has never been heard in the Indiana Senate in its history. That alone has been a tremendous gain. And I want to thank both sides for being civil, for showing not only the people that we work for that's setting up here and in the hallway that in Indiana we do things right. We're not like other states or even worse in Washington. that we're ladies and we're gentlemen, and we believe in the right to disagree and civil about it. That reminds me of how proud I am of being a Hoosier. I also want to thank the people in the gallery and outside that has been so patient in this 3-hour testimony. And also I would say to you, for you being civil, this is Indiana. You don't see this in every state, because I know that I'm sure there was different discussions that you would have liked to have commented on from your seat and probably wouldn't have blamed you. And I thank you as chairman for showing everybody today what we're made out of in this state. So having said that, do I have a motion to move the bill?
So moved.
Do I have a second? Second. Roll call vote.
Senator Lannon. I'll explain my vote. Up until a few years ago, I always felt like probably we had the regulation of alcohol pretty much right. I didn't really see much of a reason to change this, but then I started hearing from my constituents about this. And whether it was Sunday sales or some of these other little bit more unique aspects of Indiana law, I soon found that no matter how I felt personally about this, my constituents desired the opportunity to have alcohol, to purchase alcohol on Sunday, and also to purchase beer cold at wherever they thought it was an appropriate place to purchase it. Now, I don't necessarily agree with that, because I think, as the chair indicated, this is the Public Policy Committee. And so the analysis really should be, what is the proper public policy when it comes to access of a controlled substance like alcohol, which is a very, very dangerous substance. There's no doubt about that. And so the concern, it seems to me, is accessibility to the individuals that we don't think it's responsible to have possession of it, namely underage individuals, people who are clearly intoxicated. But it seems to me that whether the question of allowing the sale of cold beer at a convenience store can be handled by way of public policy itself, which would require those people selling in those establishments to have either the qualifications age-wise or the training necessary to recognize what is a responsible individual to sell alcohol to, cold beer to in particular. It also doesn't make sense to me the way that we're doing this now, because we do allow the convenience stores to sell cold wine. And I've not heard any information, at least up to this point in time, that they are not able to do that on a responsible basis. So I think that with proper amendments, this prospect can occur in the state of Indiana, and that the public policy aspects of this can be satisfied. So then the only other question, and I am sensitive to this, is should we be protecting one industry, namely the liquor store industry? And I have concerns about that. I think there's ways we could do that with proper amendments. One of the things I heard today that seems fair to me is if the convenience stores want to come here and ask for permission to sell cold beer to get into the liquor store business, maybe we should allow the liquor stores to be in the convenience store business and expand the commodities that they're able to sell. I understand right now it's very, very limited. I have no idea why that is, but if it's, if one side's asking for permission to sell something that the other side is limited to, then maybe we ought to make it a two-way street as far as those things go. So having said all this, most of all, I feel this is an issue that's been around long enough now that it should go to the full floor of the Indiana Senate and allow everybody an opportunity to either offer amendments in the way that they think is necessary to allow this to happen, and to allow for an up and down vote on the floor of the Indiana Senate. So I vote aye.
Permission to explain my vote, Mr. Chairman.
Permission granted.
Thank you. Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, I can tell you that when I started in this body in 2008, I had a different opinion about alcohol sales than I had before. And, Mark Webb will tell you that when he came to me to talk to me about expanding Sunday growler sales to the craft brewers, I was one of those people who said, oh, just another day of selling beer to people on Sunday is just another way of give access to more alcohol. Then I learned about their business, and I learned about what they do, and that the creativity, the artistic value that goes into it, and he changed my mind. This cold beer and Sunday alcohol sale thing has always perplexed me. For those of you who've been around longer than me, I really didn't understand the Sunday alcohol sales, except for the fact that somehow here in the Hoosier State we find Sunday to be more sacred than others, so we don't have that. So when the vote came up, it was easy for me to vote for Sunday sales. And then this cold beer issue came up. And I have to say, I want to give both sides a tremendous amount of just, I feel like, boy, you guys make it hard on us as legislators every time we come up with an issue, because both sides had some compelling arguments. And whenever I find myself in that situation, I always go back to when my grandfather, who was a sharecropper from Louisiana, always told me, and he said, you know, when you find yourself in a situation where people are talking and both of them have good words, just walk away, be quiet, and see who acts first. And then you'll find out where the reality. He had his own way of saying it, used a few choice words, because that was back during Jim Crow, and but that's what he meant. Don't open your mouth until you. So I go back to my experience in my district. In my district, for those of you who don't know, is Central Indianapolis, starting on 10th Street downtown, going to 71st Street, going out to Fall Creek, and then going out to 465. And I sat down with Mr. Ricker, and he's got stores. He's got, I believe, 6 stores in my district. And he's one of the best. His stores are clean. I've complimented him about the service that they've had. He's done a great job. Then I go right in the heart of my district, where all what people call the crime district, the hard-hit places. And, you know, I go in there as the senator sometimes, and I ask these people, please, if you're going to be taking resources from my community, please invest. And one of your investments should be to want your place to be clean. Just clean up the outside and tell the people who are loitering to get off the parking lot. And I've said that to liquor store owners. And the liquor store owners, every time I call them, they take care of it. The convenience store owners, some of them, not the ones that testified today, but some of them, just ignore me. And I can't imagine what would happen if they had cold beer and somebody could stand out front and drink a cold beer in front of the store. I got enough issues in my districts. And if somebody wants to, you know, take my place and they have a better idea on what I can do here, please let me know. I would have loved to have heard what the amendments were. I really would have, because I think that would have given me a little bit to, and Mr. Chairman, that's your prerogative not to hear those amendments, but I think that we all deserve to hear that, but that's not what I have in front of me. What I have in front of me is a bill that says you're going to give access to cold beer sales to convenience stores and gas stations. The gas stations in my district as a whole are doing a decent job, but I can tell you, this is, maybe it's a lesson learned. Very seldom do you find yourself in the super minority able to vote and your vote means something. But maybe this will send a shot across the bow too, that, you know, when Senator Taylor comes to you, he means it. And I asked for them to participate and be good neighbors. And, you know, I just can't see giving them access to cold beer because, quite frankly, they haven't, the access that they have now, they haven't invested in my community. So with that, I'm going to vote no.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Members of the Senate, first of all, and Mr. Chair, I am sorry. I know we've been here 3 hours and you're hearing these speeches from us before we vote, but I'd like to please explain my vote as well and everything.
Yes, sir.
Yeah. First of all, I want to thank the people who appeared here today to give their testimony on both sides, and not just today, but also during a lot of them were at the meeting we had concerning the Sunday sales, as well as the interim summer study commission that we had and everything. And so, and I appreciate them coming in and taking the time, the expense in terms of giving us the benefit of their wisdom. And because what happens is that we are educated. They educate us. And I appreciate them educating us by letting me know both sides so I can look at it, the facts, and weigh it in my mind and go one way or another in terms of that. So as a result of that, I learned some things. And I have to admit to the commission, I think from the summer when we were on the commission, that I was biased. I was biased because when we dealt with the Sunday sales, I had an issue concerning education, Sunday, religion, and Sunday sales. I had a problem with that. I also had a problem with cold beer. Because when you look at cold beer, you're looking at grocery stores, convenience stores, drugstores, and the gas stations for items. And so I said, I'm going to be objective about this whole asset. I want to listen to everything and make a decision. And so I listened to the testimony during the summer commissions that we had. And at that time, we had a vote, and I voted no, if you can recall. And so then we had the hearing just recently, Tuesday, when we had the hearing concerning Sunday sales. And after hearing the testimony, I ended up voting yes for it. And I did that because I was trying to weigh the pros and cons. I was looking for something to tell me to get away from my biasness. I was biased because of my respective district, which is similar to the district that Senator Taylor has. I don't have a large industry within my district in itself in terms of the neighborhood I am. I'm used to seeing people who, some have 9-to-5 jobs, some were making minimum wages, some were making a little bit more than minimum wages, and a lot of them ambition was to save money so they can start their own business. And I've seen people within my community that I grew up in who saved their money and started business, and a couple of them were packaged liquor stores. And I know the struggles that they went through just to make it and sustain themselves. So I had that biasness in me, and I was hoping to find something to dissuade me one way or another. And by listening to the test, being on the commission, listening to the testimony concerning Sunday sales and alcohol and cold beer, and the Sunday sales, I exercised that biasness. But as I listened to the testimony as it went on, the pros and cons, to talk about the loss of wages to the terms of sales on a Sunday to Illinois and the surrounding states and everything, then I changed my vote. I was persuaded. In terms of cold beer, now I'm faced that situation with cold beer. And when I look at this situation, and I think about it, and I try to exercise the knowledge I got from a historic perspective. From a historic perspective, we have these laws in place for a reason. And that reason has withstood the test of time. And the only thing I've heard to make us get away from that reason, they're saying it's time, things need to be changed. What esteems things yesterday, 10 years, 20 years, 30 years, were the same in terms of packaged liquor stores having an exclusive right to sell cold beer. And you see the larger industries, convenience stores, drugstores, service stations, because that's what I was hearing, the number of stores we own. And I know, and I have to utilize common sense as well, in terms from a historic perspective and a common sense. If I buy in bulk, I'm going to have a cheaper purchasing price, which means when I sell, hopefully I'm going to increase and maximize my profit. By experience, which I have to throw in as well, I know a packaged liquor store, neighborhood liquor store, cannot buy in bulk, and he cannot buy and get the kind of discount a larger industry is going to get. Therefore, he's going to have a tough time. He's going to have a tough time, or she's going to have a tough time. And I have to say she because my mother-in-law had a packaged liquor store. And I know the changes that she went through and everything. And so the bias I had has not been overcome in reference to that regard. It was overcome concerning the Sunday sales, but has not been overcome concerning the cold beer sales. So, and when I look at the grocery stores in my area, and I look at the convenience stores, and I look at the service stations, I look at the drugstores. And as far as the ability, from the very beginning, grocery store, the objective was to sell groceries. They buried it out and brought in other products. Convenience store, they had a variety store. They were not selling alcohol. They brought that in later on. They were profitable. Drugstore. I mean, that was neighborhood drugstores, and their business was not selling alcohol, but they want to bring it in and have the ability to do so now. Same thing with gas stations. They sell gas. That's their main product. Everything else was accessory, convenience, added in, and some of those things they refer to as what? A loss leader. They put together a marketing mix that they refer to, and part of that marketing mix deals with loss leaders to get people in the store. Packaged liquor store, neighborhood in my area can't do that. And so that's a big advantage. And so I have to be selfish in trying to help them. They're the ones that help put me here where I am right now. Otherwise, I would not be here if I did not have their support and everything. But I'm saying, in looking at the surrounding facts of the history of this liquor industry in Indiana, looking at the common sense I think I have at this point in time, the experience that I've had in terms of what I've observed throughout my tenure as growing up in my neighborhood, it's difficult for me to allow a neighborhood packaged liquor store like my mother-in-law endure the competitive disadvantage that you would have in trying to compete against a convenience store, gas station, drugstore. She couldn't do it. So I have to respectfully vote no for the bill. But again, I want to thank all the people, witnesses who testified for educating me concerning some other aspects I didn't think of. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. And your vote?
Senator Becker. No. Senator Grooms.
No.
Senator Messmer.
No.
Senator Merritt. Senator Ford.
No.
Senator Sandlin.
No.
Senator Alting.
No.
Fails 1-9.
The bill fails 9-1. Thank you for being here again. Thank you for your patience. Meeting's adjourned.